Chapter 1573. Due to the combat consciousness cultivated for tens of thousands of years, the great principal golden immortal instinctively perceived the danger. Not to mention anything else, it was abnormal for an earthly immortal junior to be so confident in the face of the great principal golden immortal, and there must be a reason behind the abnormality. Unfortunately, it was too late to notice the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal. He could only clearly feel that his consciousness was entangled and dragged by the two fire dragons and plunged into a white ball. Finding that something was wrong, the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal immediately began to struggle, trying to break free from the ball. As soon as he struggled, Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal realized that something was wrong. The more he struggled, the faster he was sucked into the ball. There seemed to be a great suction force coming from inside, causing Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal to be involuntarily sucked in without any strength to struggle. What was more frightening was that this strong suction force did not stop after completely dragging the part of the consciousness that had rushed into Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. It followed the connection between the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal and the immortal body and began to forcibly drag the part of the consciousness in the immortal body. Originally, when he was burned by the spirit-devouring dragon fire, the consciousness of the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal let out a scream, but now that he was absorbed into the ball, there was no more sound, only a feeling of extreme fear was slowly dissipating. That feeling was even more frightening than crashing into the Scarlet River. This ball in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness was naturally the bead formed by the white fire seed left by Li Cheng. In the past, the two yin-yang fire dragons and this ball formed the pattern of two dragons playing with a bead in Yang Chen's mind. The ball was the bead that was played by the two dragons. In the past, Yang Chen did not know what other uses this ball had. Most of the time, he just thought that it was the place where the yin-yang fire dragon went in to be nourished. Anyway, every time the yin-yang fire dragon entered the ball, there would be a feeling of being charged, so there was no harm in it. This time, Yang Chen really saw the power of this fireball. After the yin-yang fire dragon entangled the consciousness, it almost instinctively dragged the consciousness into the fireball. Yang Chen's heart was moved, but he did not stop it. What his sworn brother Li Cheng left him would definitely be a surprise. Sure enough, the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal was soon dragged into the fireball, and there was no sound anymore. Not only that, but there was also a steady flow of consciousness into the fireball. It of the fireball of the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal. Because of the attraction of the fireball, the speed of the great principal golden immortal's consciousness was much faster. The consciousness that descended from the immortal world was frantically rushing into the immortal body. Then, it was attracted by the fireball and involuntarily entered the fireball without any possibility of struggling. There were at least 10 true immortals of tribulation around the cultivator, each occupying a position. There was a very complicated magic formation underground. The 10 true immortals of tribulation were sparing no effort in activating the magic formation underground with their cultivation. However, upon closer inspection, the cultivator's body seemed to be slowly losing something, and the cultivator's body also gave off a feeling of loss of spirituality. Everything is normal. A great figure looked at the cultivator in the middle for a long time, then nodded slightly and said to the people around him, "In a few years, it will completely descend. I believe it won't take many years for the mortal world to rebuild the profound heaven gate." Everyone let out a sigh of relief. The mysterious heaven sect had been patiently waiting for this moment for many years. As long as they could rebuild the profound heaven gate in the mortal world, the temporary grievances of the profound heaven gate in the spiritual and celestial worlds were nothing. When the time came, they would make those people pay back double. In order to prepare for the descent of the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal's consciousness, the celestial world's Black Heaven sect had prepared for hundreds of years, and it had been more than a year since the array was activated. At this time, the consciousness of the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal that had descended to the lower realm was estimated to have firmly controlled the situation. Next, Everyone just had to wait for all the consciousnesses to descend to the lower realm, and it would be considered a great success. There's a change. All of a sudden, a big shot noticed that something was wrong. The dozen or so true immortals around the cultivator in the middle seemed to be working very hard at the moment. It seemed that they were increasing the output of their cultivation. Everyone was shocked, and their gazes immediately landed on the person who had just spoken. That big shot was the one who set up the array, so he should know the changes in the array the best. There was no other way. As long as the array was activated, the cultivator in the middle could no longer communicate with everyone. If there was any problem, they could only look for the expert who set up the array. The expert did not let everyone down. He immediately observed the array nervously. This observation lasted for a whole month, and he finally found the problem. It's okay. The expert finally gave a conclusion, and then he immediately explained, the speed of the consciousness descending to the lower realm has increased. I think the part in the mortal world has completely controlled the situation and has taken the initiative to speed up. At present, except for the true immortals who were controlling the array with their cultivation, there seemed to be no other abnormalities. There was only one explanation. That was, the speed of the consciousness descending to the lower realm had increased. No matter what the reason was, it was good news for everyone for the time being. According to this speed, we don't need to wait for another 10 years or so. In 3 years at most, we can completely descend. The expert who set up the array had also been estimating this speed. After a while, he immediately gave an answer. God bless our Black Heaven sect. Now the reconstruction of the Black Heaven sect in the mortal world can be advanced by a few years. Good, good. Several big shots nodded in unison. One of them even laughed heartily and said, I really want to see how those guys will look when they find out that the Black Heaven sect in the mortal world is being rebuilt. It makes me feel so happy just thinking about it. Humph, they only know how to rob the old lord's magic treasures, elixirs, and inheritance. Who would think of using the old lord's servant? Another big shot next to him laughed and said, It's a pity that the old lord has to die. Otherwise, our Black Heaven sect would have unified the world long ago. The happiness of the big shots did not hinder the consciousness of the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal in the middle from descending to the mortal world at a speed many times faster than before. They had no idea what kind of dangerous situation the consciousness of the expert they had chosen was in. Everyone was looking forward to the faces of those guys who wanted to force the abdication after the reconstruction of the Black Heaven sect in the mortal world. Chapter 1574. No one could see the despair in the heart of the master who was in the lower realm, because the consciousness had left the body. In fact, what was sitting there was just a body. Not to mention showing an expression and making a hint, it was impossible to even move. At this moment, the great principal golden immortal, whose consciousness was in the lower realm, was already extremely anxious. His complete consciousness was stretched into a long consciousness that would take 10 years to enter the immortal body normally because of crossing the two realms. If he completely descended, with his strength, of course, he would not care about a little Earth Immortal Jr., and he would not care about crossing the barrier between the mortal world and the spiritual world. The problem was that when he found out from the spiritual awareness seed, left by Yang Chun, that the owner of the spiritual awareness seed was likely to be related to the Taishaman's extermination, he couldn't help it anymore. In order to prevent Yang Chun from giving up the connection with the spiritual awareness seed and getting away with it, the great principal golden immortal had to take the initiative to attack when he only descended 1/10. There was no problem with this idea in itself. With the strength of the great principal golden immortal, 1/10 was enough to send ordinary earth immortals and sky immortals to hell. The problem was that he encountered Yang Chun, who cultivated the three purities secret art. And the most unfortunate thing was that Yang Chun got a mysterious white fire seed from Li Cheng. Without the fire seed, Yang Chun could only give up the spiritual awareness seed completely when he saw that the situation was not good, and he had even done so. But the other parties still came to the door, and this had no choice but to retreat for Yang Chun. Speaking of which, Yang Chun himself didn't know that the fireball formed by the white fire seed would be so terrifying. It turned out that he planned to use the bloody river and other things in his sea of consciousness to fight against it. The current situation was somewhat beyond Yang Chen's expectations. He did not expect that the fireball would take the initiative to swallow the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal. What kind of situation was this? However, it seemed to be a good thing. At least after the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal was swallowed by the fireball, there was no more sound. The extremely dangerous situation where he needed to go all out suddenly disappeared, which made Yang Chun a little surprised. Immediately after that, a pure divine sense without any impurities emerged from the fireball. It entered Yang Chen's sea of wisdom and began to repair the damage caused by the other party's divine sense rampaging about in Yang Chen's sea of wisdom. Although Yang Chen's sea of consciousness had completely transformed into spiritual consciousness threads, the other party's collision only broke the shape of his sea of consciousness, but did not cause any more damage to Yang Chun. However, in order to restore Yang Chen's sea of consciousness to its original state, at least in terms of appearance, it would consume a lot of Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness. This pure spiritual awareness just became an excellent tonic. Under the circulation of Yang Chen's three purities secret art, it was quickly absorbed. The almighty immortal consciousness that entered Yang Chen's sea of consciousness from the mortal world, along with the connection between Yang Chun and the seed of spiritual awareness, was now out of control. No matter how his spiritual awareness struggled, it could not escape the fatal attraction in the fireball to the consciousness of the main body. This suction force was so strong that he couldn't break free at all. He could only bring endless terror and despair as he slowly entered the seemingly orderly purgatory. Yes, the fireball was now in the consciousness of the almighty immortal. It was a purgatory. After the consciousness of his spiritual awareness went in, there was no more feeling. With a memory in it, the remaining consciousness soon found that he had lost that memory and could not remember it in any way. At this time, the one who wanted to cut his wrist was already the almighty immortal. If he could take the initiative to cut off the connection between the spiritual awareness, he would not fall into such a situation. As long as Yang Chen's seed of spiritual awareness had not been completely refined and swallowed, there would still be a chance in the future. Unfortunately, the almighty immortal could not give up this piece of consciousness even if he wanted to now. If he had the complete strength of the almighty immortal, he might be able to think of a way on this. Unfortunately, he only had 1/10 of the strength of his main body, and the follow-up complete consciousness was still entering the immortal body bit by bit, and then being pulled into the sea of consciousness of this junior in the spiritual world, and then disappearing inexplicably. This feeling was more torturous than killing him with a knife. With a knife, the death was clean and there was no pain. But now the almighty immortal had to bear this kind of torture that was more cruel than cutting the flesh with a blunt knife. He took the initiative to send himself to the door and let his consciousness wear away bit by bit. The fireball was like a stone mill, grinding his own spiritual awareness consciousness little by little. It was a more painful process than being cut by 1,000 knives. Yang Chun did not have the joy of a winner at the moment. He was now in another crisis. The fireball could refine the spiritual awareness of the almighty immortal and feed it back to Yang Chun. This was a great thing. The problem was that now it was refining almighty immortal, and Yang Chun's realm was only the 3rd grade of the human immortal. Even if it was purely calculated in terms of the spiritual awareness realm, Yang Chun was only the 5th grade of the Earth Immortal. Between the Almighty Immortal and the Earth Immortal, there were 4 big realms, namely the Heaven Immortal, Shin Immortal, Golden Immortal, and the Almighty Immortal. This pure spiritual awareness that was fed back, whether in quality or quantity, completely surpassed Yang Chun's current spiritual awareness. Even if Yang Chun cultivated the 3 purities secret art, at most, there was some possibility of comparison in terms of toughness. Other than that, whether it was condensed or in quality, it was a lot better than Yang Chen's current spiritual awareness. In terms of quantity alone, The almighty immortal's spiritual awareness was tens of thousands of times more than Yang Chen's earth immortal level spiritual awareness. At this moment, the fireball refined the other's consciousness to feed back to Yang Chen's spiritual awareness, and Yang Chen's sea of consciousness began to bear tremendous pressure. Fortunately, Yang Chen's sea of consciousness was many times larger than that of ordinary earth immortal masters. For the time being, there was no need to worry that his sea of consciousness would be blown up. However, now he had to start thinking about this problem. Looking at the posture of the fireball, it seemed that the almighty immortal's sea of consciousness did not intend to stop until all the consciousness of the almighty immortal was dragged in and refined. This could also be regarded as doing something that started and finished. The almighty immortal could be completely solved without leaving any future troubles. This was something that Yang Chen was happy to see. Otherwise, Yang Chen would always live in crisis. Moreover, there was an almighty immortal in the mortal world. With what he dug out from the seed of spiritual awareness, Chunyang Palace would definitely bear the brunt and be destroyed. Yang Chen would not watch this kind of thing happen, so he must bear the impact of the complete almighty immortal spiritual awareness. For the time being, there was no other way. There was no other way but to cultivate the three purities' secret art madly, absorb and refine the spiritual awareness that was fed back to him, improve his cultivation, and expand his sea of consciousness. The three purities' secret art was circulating wildly in his body. Every circulation would absorb and refine a part of the spiritual awareness that was fed back to him in the fireball. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation was also improving wildly. Chapter 1575. Finally, the three purities secret art was the trump card left by the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. In this case of external help, it lived up to expectations and began to improve Yang Chen's realm. From the 5th grade of the Earth Immortal to the 6th grade of the Earth Immortal, ordinary cultivation would take at least decades or even hundreds of years to improve. However, with the spiritual awareness of the great principal golden immortal as a tonic, this process was compressed into a short few months. However, it did not stop at the 6th grade of the Earth Immortal, and it continued to improve at this jaw-dropping speed. The 7th grade of the Earth Immortal, the 8th grade of the Earth Immortal, the 9th grade of the Earth Immortal, the 10th grade of the Earth Immortal. After 3 years, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness had entered the ranks of the 1st grade of the Heavenly Immortal. During this time, the sea of consciousness expanded crazily. It has expanded from 15,000 acres to 20,000 acres, and the height has more than tripled. But even so, it couldn't completely accommodate the pure spiritual awareness overflowing from the fireball. The entire space of the sea of consciousness has been completely filled with these spiritual awareness, and the fireball is still constantly spitting out pure spiritual awareness. All the spiritual awareness threads have been recondensed by Yang Chen. This was the recondensed spiritual awareness of the great principal golden immortal that had been refined by the fireball. Compared with the original strength, it was several levels higher. Even if there was another impact of the spiritual awareness of the great principal golden immortal, Yang Chen could confidently say that he could completely withstand the pure spiritual awareness attack. The only concern was that if there were more spiritual awareness backfeeding, there would be no other possibility for Yang Chen's sea of consciousness to explode. The three purities secret art has reached the 4th level. According to the normal situation, at this time, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness should be split. In the past, Yang Chen had been condensing, and before the spiritual power cultivation base and the spiritual awareness cultivation base were not different by 2 realms, Yang Chen did not intend to split his spiritual awareness. However, from the looks of it now, it was impossible for it not to split apart. If this continued, it would be difficult for it to even protect itself. It was not that he had not thought about double cultivation with Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, and Tao Junki. The Supreme Mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra could transfer part of the pressure of the spiritual awareness to the 3 women, but now there were too many spiritual awareness in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, and it had not been refined and absorbed by himself. Yang Chen was afraid that once he lost control, he would implicate the three women. As a man, it was better for him to bear this kind of risk alone. He would wait until he was able to fully control it in the future before anything else. Just when Yang Chun was about to be unable to hold on, the endless consciousness of the almighty Immortal finally completely entered the fireball, and there was no follow-up consciousness. This also meant that for the time being, Yang Chun only needed to deal with the current number of enemies. He didn't have to worry about more coming. This was originally a happy thing, but soon Yang Chun could no longer be happy. Yang Chun found that the fireball was still continuously feeding back the spiritual awareness. The complete spiritual awareness of the almighty Immortal. Even if the fireball was more powerful, it was limited by Yang Chun's cultivation base. In any case, it was impossible to completely refine it in just 3 years. According to Yang Chun's guess, the remaining consciousness and spiritual awareness of the vast majority of the great principal golden immortals were still waiting to be slowly refined in the fireball. This process was likely to last for hundreds of years, or even longer. The terrible thing was that during this time, the fireball was likely to maintain the same speed as it was now, constantly feeding back the spiritual awareness. Even without the supplement of the almighty Immortal, he would still face the same danger as before. At present, he could only take one step at a time. If it didn't work, Yang Chun could only split his spiritual awareness and then share the pressure of this spiritual awareness together. At that time, the three purities secret art will be able to enter the 5th layer. Whether it was efficiency or endurance, it would be greatly improved. Just when Yang Chun was about to make up his mind to start splitting his spiritual awareness, he suddenly found a very weak connection. This was the spiritual awareness seed in the mortal world. The memory of the almighty Immortal was devoured and excavated, but there was still a trace left and it had not been completely refined. Now that the almighty Immortal had been killed, naturally, the remnants of this spiritual awareness seed had reoccupied the immortal body. Only relying on the strength of the three purities secret art, it barely maintained an extremely weak connection with Yang Chun. To be able to leave the spiritual awareness seed and to be able to retain the immortal body for Yang Chun, this was the capital to dare to fight with others in the future. At present, there was an abundance of spiritual awareness that could not be used up. If he didn't strengthen his own spiritual awareness seed, then when, suddenly, with a direction, Yang Chun did not hesitate to mobilize his already refined spiritual awareness and began to strengthen the spiritual awareness seed. Of course, while consuming his own spiritual awareness, Yang Chun would not forget to draw supplement from those pure spiritual awareness. The first thing that needed to be strengthened was the connection between the spiritual awareness seed and the main body. Because he had crossed the barrier between the spiritual world and the mortal world, the spiritual awareness that needed to be strengthened was simply an astronomical figure for Yang Chun. And for the current situation, it was also an excellent way to consume spiritual awareness. The connection was too fragile. Yang Chun could only strengthen it a little bit, each time adding almost the same weak trace, carefully, for fear that the intensity was too much and it would break. At the same time, he did not forget to follow this connection and slightly supplement the spiritual awareness seed. The almighty Immortal forcibly opened the barrier between the spiritual world and the mortal world, creating a good condition for Yang Chun. When Yang Chun's spiritual awareness began to transmit down, although the consumption of spiritual awareness was still huge, it did not take too long. The spiritual awareness seed received a little nourishment and immediately grew a little stronger. And at the same time, the connection with Yang Chun also strengthened a little. Yang Chun increased and strengthened it bit by bit, and the spiritual awareness seed that had been refined and swallowed in the mortal world began to slowly turn into a small group, then swelled and slowly recovered. For the first time, the pure spiritual awareness in the sea of consciousness finally showed a situation where the speed of consumption was greater than the speed of replenishment. The accumulated mountain of spiritual awareness was reduced a little bit, and the feeling of the sea of consciousness about to burst finally slowed down and no longer appeared. Crossing the two worlds, especially from the spiritual world to the mortal world, The power consumed was definitely a terrifying number. The spiritual awareness stored in the sea of consciousness of more than 20,000 acres, just to strengthen the connection with the spiritual awareness seed and supplement and nourish the spiritual awareness seed, was consumed in just 5 years. At this point, the spiritual awareness seed was at least half of the original level. As long as there was a trace of spiritual awareness in the fireball, it would automatically be supplemented to the spiritual awareness seed. Looking at this posture, at least for a few years before the spiritual awareness seed was fully restored, Yang Chun could temporarily not worry about the problem of the sea of consciousness being blown up. Gao Yu, Gong Sun Ling, and Tao Junki finally watched their husband get up and stand up after sitting in seclusion for almost 10 years. Chapter 1576. Seeing Yang Chun stand up, the 3 women were all surprised for a while. Before, he almost didn't explain anything, and he began to retreat, and he was sweating profusely during the retreat, which was something that had never happened before. The retreat lasted for 10 years. During the 10 years, the 3 women were frightened and always worried about Yang Chun. Now that they saw Yang Chun standing up safely, they finally let go of that worry. Husband, Gao Yu almost cried with joy. Even if Yang Chun was sitting in front of her, she had a vague feeling that she almost couldn't see Yang Chun. Gong Sunling didn't lose her composure like Gao Yu, but she also walked silently in front of Yang Chun and hugged Yang Chun tightly, for fear that he would leave in the next moment. Tao Junki had the highest cultivation base among the people. At the moment, she was also smiling with tears, and she sat quietly and smiled. Only Lan Ning was very impatient. She had stayed here for 10 years. Although the environment was no different from the outside, she didn't like it very much. It's a pity that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find a way out, even if her cultivation base was higher than Gong Sunling's. Over the years, she had also become honest. Seeing that Yang Chun woke up, Lan Ning directly snorted. Yang Chen's previous performance was really a bit of cup bow and a snake. Or was there any threat? She had been with Yang Chen all the time. Why didn't she feel it? But to say that Yang Chen was deliberately mystifying, Yang Chen couldn't use 10 years to make such a joke with her. What the hell is going on? She waited until the women and Yang Chen's love had ended. Lan Ning came forward, frowned, and asked angrily. Here, only she had a special identity and could ask like this. Someone attacked me. Yang Chun explained with a smile, and then saw Lan Ying's unbelieving expression. At the moment, Yang Chun did not say much, just stretched out a finger, smiled, and said to Lan Ning, Feel it? Lan Ning was used to being a pirate on the sea alone. She was quite fearless. Seeing Yang Chun stretch out his finger, she immediately unconvinced and stretched out her finger with Yang Chen's finger. She said in a tender voice, Feel it then, feel it. Who is afraid of who? As soon as the fingers of the 2 people touched, Yang Chun launched a few pure spiritual awareness in his sea of consciousness and hit Lan Ying's spiritual awareness. In fact, it was all the contact of spiritual awareness. Stretching out his fingers was just to let Lan Ying get ready. The moment the 2 touched was the moment of launch. Boom! An earth-shattering majesty erupted in Lan Ying's sea of consciousness. Although those divine senses did not contain any emotions or thoughts, just the feeling of being grand and pure to the extreme made Lan Ning instantly have an unattainable feeling of looking up to it. What kind of unspeakable fear was that? The innate fear of some unknown existence came from the bones, and it had almost become an instinct. Lan Ning didn't think about it and retracted her hand, as if Yang Chen's finger was a red-hot soldering iron. Fortunately, Yang Chun just let her feel it and did not really want to target her. After the contact, Yang Chun retracted the shock of his spiritual awareness. Even so, Lan Ning was frightened. What kind of existence was that? At the thought of facing the existence of this level in a moment, Lan Ning was a little scared. After a while, Lan Ning calmed her mind. This cannot be blamed on Lan Ning. She was a monster cultivator. From childhood to adulthood, there was no decent spiritual awareness cultivation method. She relied on her own strong cultivation base to exchange for her current status. Her spiritual awareness was not as good as her spiritual power cultivation base. It could only be regarded as average. In the face of the spiritual awareness that still had the aura of a great principal golden immortal, she was naturally frightened. Direct spiritual awareness attack. Lanning was not a fool, an expert of this level. Not to mention her, even an expert 10 times stronger than her would not necessarily be able to find it. No wonder she didn't notice anything before, but Yang Chun was facing a formidable enemy. If it was her, she wouldn't be able to stick to it and come back here. What was even more surprising was that Yang Chun was able to persist under that level of attack. For a full 10 years, he was still safe and sound. It was obvious that the other party's attack had failed. Even the shock of the spiritual awareness that she felt was so terrifying. What kind of danger did Yang Chun face directly? This time, Lanning no longer dared to say anything more. The junior who had always been regarded as a little brother now gave her a completely unfathomable feeling. Even she knew in her heart that the 3 women around Yang Chun now did not seem to be easy to deal with. Fortunately, she also felt bored before, but she did not do many inappropriate things. Almost. Yang Chun answered Lan Ying's question with a smile. Lanning was very smart and did not ask much. Yang Chun only said 3 words, but did not explain further. That was, he did not want to know too much. Lanning was not the kind of woman who asked for the root of the matter. Lanning was well-behaved here, but Gao Gong Sunling and Tao Junkie still needed Yang Chun to comfort them one by one. In front of Lanning, the 3 women did not ask much. Gong Sunling hurriedly prepared some wine and dishes for Yang Chun so that he could ease the tension after the battle. This kind of spiritual awareness attack, outsiders could not see the clues at all. Except for Yang Chun's own performance of sweating, everyone did not know what he had experienced. At this point, Yang Chun's performance was not as calm as the great principal golden immortal of the immortal world. The master of the immortal world had been refining all the consciousness, and there was no change in his own body. A few years ago, the dozen or so true immortals who were responsible for controlling the formation finally exhausted their whole body cultivation base to determine that the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal had been sent to the mortal world. As for what happened in the mortal world, it was not something they could know. Before setting off, there was an agreement within the profound heaven sect that after the great principal golden immortal came to the mortal world, 1 or 2 masters would be created to ascend in a short period of time, and the news that they had already established themselves in the mortal world would be sent to the spiritual world. The spiritual world would then send people to ascend and bring the news to the immortal world. During the time of waiting for the news, the profound heaven sect tried to be patient, lest their own arrangement be deliberately destroyed. Although this method of sending people to the mortal world was obtained through the guidance of the Taoist children of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, who knew if the guys who first broke into the Tishita Palace had obtained similar things. The mortal world of Taishaman needed to be careful in everything. The high and mighty figures of the profound heaven sect in the immortal world, no one would know that the consciousness of the great principal golden immortal they sent had not had time to fully occupy the immortal body, and had already been absorbed and refined by the fireball in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. The news they were waiting for was doomed to not be sent up. It was just not known whether these great figures would be as happy as they were now when they waited for hundreds of years and got nothing. Chapter 1577. Yang Chun was now even more puzzled about the white fire seed. What kind of fire seed could improve the grade of other fire seeds? What kind of fire seed could forcibly collect the complete consciousness of a great principal golden immortal and refine it under the spiritual awareness cultivation of a grade 5 earth immortal? What kind of surprise did Li Chun give him? Sometimes there were too many mysterious things that Yang Chun did not understand. Even if he had the memories and knowledge of his past life, there was no way to figure it out. Fortunately, one thing was certain: Li Chun would not harm Yang Chun. Otherwise, there was no need to specifically target Yang Chun. As long as he did not tell Yang Chun the difficulty of refining the entrance to the beheading immortal platform, he could make Yang Chun drag him down in the mortal world for most of his life. Regarding this kind of thing, Yang Chun was very open-minded. Although it was very dangerous this time, he also obtained great benefits. And this benefit was not only for Yang Chen alone. Almost all of Yang Chen's people could enjoy it. When Yang Chen and his wife were alone, Yang Chen briefly described the attack he suffered. Of course, Yang Chen would not say the specific reason, and the three women were also smart not to ask. This time, Yang Chen also passed on the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra to Tao Junqi. In the mortal world, Tao Junqi and Shi Wushuang, the Murong sisters, were all married to Yang Chen later, so they had not enjoyed the treatment of the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. Now the pure spiritual awareness in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness was still increasing, and Yang Chen needed all the channels that could consume these spiritual awareness. For the time being, restoring the spiritual awareness seed could still buy a few years for Yang Chen. Now that the spiritual awareness seed had recovered by half, there was no need for Yang Chen to carefully maintain the connection between his body and the seed. Next, Yang Chen would naturally share these benefits with his wives and concubines. To be honest, Yang Chen didn't know how long this great principled golden immortal's divine sense could be refined and how long it would be a threat to him. After all, there were differences between great principled golden immortals and great principled golden immortals. The gap between experts was absolutely like heaven and earth. Faced with this kind of unknown threat, Yang Chen could only take it one step at a time. On one hand, he was trying his best to exhaust the enemy, and on the other hand, he was beginning to make other preparations. If he could see his sworn brother Li Cheng in the near future, he might be able to do something. Tao Junqi was a little hesitant when she received the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra for the first time. Naturally, Tao Junqi had also prepared some cultivation techniques for husband and wife. Moreover, they were of the best quality among the Taishamen. Based on her performance in the Taishamen over the years, coupled with the care of her master and grandmaster, it was not a problem for her to find some dual cultivation techniques. Were the cultivation methods of Chunyang Palace that Yang Chen took out really suitable? However, seeing that Gao Yu and Gong Sunling took turns to carry out this kind of divine sense dual cultivation with her husband, with Tao Junqi's worldly wisdom, of course, she would not let herself show off and began to learn without hesitation. It's just that without practice, she couldn't understand what was going on in many places. Fortunately, her husband must be very skilled, and he would definitely be able to give her pointers when she practiced. Gao Yu was the first, Gong Sunling was the second, and Tao Junqi was the third. Tao Junqi was very surprised. After Gao Yu and Yang Chen finished their cultivation, they actually had an unusually shocked expression, and at the same time, there was also a slight fear. Then, without saying a word, she immediately began to practice alone. She didn't know what she was afraid of. Gong Sunling's performance was the same. Perhaps she was also affected after seeing Gao Yu's performance. After the cultivation, she was not as shocked as Gao Yu. She even took Tao Junqi with a smile and sent her to her husband's side. However, Tao Junqi could perceive the worry hidden in Gong Sunling's heart. What was it for? It was just double cultivation. Was her husband seriously injured? Although she was born in Taishamen, Tao Junqi had never participated in the high-level arrangement for Chunyang Palace. For Yang Chen, Tao Junqi was also loyal to him, even after faintly noticing that some arrangements of Taishamen were not appropriate. In order not to be in a dilemma, she also ascended in advance under the arrangement of Yang Chen. Especially after ascending, Tao Junqi also missed Yang Chen a lot. Between her husband and the sect, she had been partial to her husband's side. Regarding Yang Chen's worries, Tao Junqi, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling were the same, but she didn't know the specific reason. She simply thought that Yang Chen was injured and needed to be healed. The Supreme Mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra seemed to be a good healing cultivation method, especially in the case of injuries to the spiritual sense and sea of consciousness. After comprehending it for such a long time, Tao Junqi understood that there was a healing function in it. "Husband, what do you want me to do?" Sitting face to face with Yang Chen, Tao Junqi almost sat in Yang Chen's arms at the moment. Of course, there was nothing between husband and wife, and Tao Junqi also let it go. Now, it was still Yang Chen's injury that mattered. As soon as Tao Junqi came up, she carefully asked Yang Chen, "Do it, just follow my husband." Yang Chun smiled. He also understood Tao Junkie's careful thoughts, but he did not say it out. He just reminded her, no matter what you find in a while, don't be surprised. I know. Tao Junkie saw the performance of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. Of course, she knew in her heart that there must be something beyond everyone's expectations. After obediently agreeing, she began to follow Yang Chen's movements. As soon as the two people's spiritual awareness came into contact, the overwhelming and unreachable spiritual awareness transmitted by Yang Chun suddenly shocked Tao Junkie. Fortunately, Yang Chun had just reminded her, Tao Junkie was barely able to control herself and would not fail the first spiritual awareness double cultivation. What was the level of cultivation of her husband's spiritual awareness? It was definitely more than the earth immortal level, at least in the heaven immortal level. After a longer period of contact, Tao Junkie finally confirmed this. No wonder her husband could become a 5th-grade alchemist master at a young age. When she was in the mortal world, she said that to become a 5th-grade alchemist master, spiritual awareness was the key. It turned out that her husband was really so strong. It was not just a natural multitasking. The next change made Tao Junkie almost lose control of her mind. Her own spiritual awareness, driven by Yang Chen's spiritual awareness, improved rapidly through the coordination of Taishan Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. Human Immortal Grade 8, Human Immortal Grade 9, Human Immortal Grade 10, Earth Immortal Grade 1, Earth Immortal Grade 2. It kept improving as if there was no end. Tao Junkie only felt that everything was so illusory. This time, with her husband's spiritual awareness double cultivation, her own spiritual awareness cultivation base was directly promoted to the Earth Immortal Grade 8 before it stopped completely. How is this possible? What kind of cultivation method could have such an abnormal effect? However, she finally understood the meaning of some parts of the Taishan Yin-Yang Heart Sutra that she didn't understand before. It turned out to be like this. After the first spiritual awareness double cultivation of the two people, Tao Junkie was shocked, even more than Gao Yu. Is all this true? Chapter 1578. Of course, everything that happened was true. Tao Junkie immediately sat down and began to explore her spiritual awareness cultivation. The 8th grade of the Earth Immortal Realm, the real spiritual awareness cultivation, there was absolutely no discount. Not only that, her own sea of consciousness seemed to have been recondensed, and the degree of toughness made Tao Junkie a little afraid. Not because of her own spiritual awareness realm, but because she was afraid that her realm would be improved so much in such a short period of time. Would it bring other bad consequences? Don't worry, there will be no problem with the cultivation method of the immortal world. Yang Chen seemed to guess Tao Junkie's thoughts and whispered in Tao Junkie's ear. Tao Junkie's delicate body trembled slightly. Only now did she remember that this husband of hers had always been well-read and knowledgeable. Furthermore, he was always able to find treasures that ordinary people wouldn't even believe and in corners that others didn't know about. The Immortal Peach was proof. Yang Chun personally led the women to find clues from a miscellaneous book and then found it. Tao Junkie herself was present. It couldn't be fake at all. Since Yang Chun said that this was the cultivation method of the immortal world, then it must be the cultivation method of the immortal world. Thinking of this, Tao Junkie's worries gradually dissipated. Thinking of her previous worries that the cultivation method found in Chunyang Palace might be too low level, it was really a joke. However, this worry was gone, and new doubts appeared. Since there was no need to worry about the cultivation method, even her own spiritual awareness cultivation had improved so much. Why would Gao Yu and Gong Sunling still have such worries? This question was not good to ask in person. It seemed that she could only ask it when the three women were alone. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation still stayed at the 1st grade of the Heaven Immortal Realm. The three women and his spiritual awareness double cultivation, of course, had some effect, but there were too many pure spiritual awareness in the sea of consciousness. Under the constant replenishment, the consumption was just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood, and soon it was automatically replenished. It was not that Yang Chun could not continue to improve his spiritual awareness cultivation, but if he continued to improve, Yang Chun would immediately face the consequences of his spiritual awareness splitting. For the time being, Yang Chun had not found a carrier for his spiritual awareness splitting. For the time being, Yang Chun did not want to rush into this result. Yang Chun couldn't help but be cautious. When he killed the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord on the Immortal Executioner platform, it was so hasty that there were many questions about the Three Purities secret art that he had no time to ask. Now Yang Chun could only explore by himself. It was fortunate that the seed of spiritual awareness had not been completely swallowed. In a short period of time, Yang Chun did not feel that God would care for him so much that he could immediately solve all the troubles. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were of course worried about the problem of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness. When they first cultivated the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, except for Gao Yu's healing, the other women were all trying to ease the skyrocketing spiritual awareness of Yang Chun, lest his spiritual awareness had a problem. Now that everyone's spiritual awareness double cultivation was completed, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness cultivation base had been upgraded to the 8th grade of the Earth Immortal realm, which was more than a great realm higher than the spiritual power cultivation base, but Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base had not fallen. What did this mean? The two women were very clear. Since Yang Chun did not completely solve the problem of his spiritual awareness, but he did not say why, it must be related to this inexplicable attack. The two women now wished that Yang Chen's other wives and concubines were around, and everyone cultivated together, and then lowered Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base. Of course, Tao Junkie would not understand this. There was no problem in cultivating the cultivation methods of the immortal world. Everyone's spiritual awareness cultivation base had improved so fast. Everything looked perfect, didn't it? Senior Lan, this sea of hatred is the site of my Chunyang Palace. If Senior doesn't mind, you can live here temporarily. Luring Lan Ying to the sea of hatred, Yang Chun certainly had a purpose. Such a super fighter of the Earth Immortal level was still of great use to the current Chunyang Palace in the spiritual world. If he could abduct one, he would abduct one. Even if he didn't join the Chunyang Palace, he had to pull her to the side of Chunyang Palace. For Yang Chen's invitation, Lanning did not hesitate to agree. She had endured the taste of wandering alone in the spiritual world for almost 1,000 years. Of course, she understood the benefits of having the support of the sect, but now she didn't want to join any sect. Fortunately, Yang Chen only invited her to take root here and did not ask her to join the Chunyang Palace. She settled down for the time being and made a decision in the future. Next, Yang Chun, who was free for a short period of time, immediately began to be busy with another thing. The chef who promised Fatty Jing, who that year had not been arranged well. After being attacked, he had been in retreat. This was a full 10 years. He didn't know if Fatty was waiting for it now. Returning to the Chunyang Palace with the three women, the Chunyang Palace now had the appearance of a mountain gate. The official disciples were still the head of the palace and several elders, but a group of indigenous people were accepted as slaves. The whole mountain gate looked good. Gao Yu and Tao Junkie settled down in the sect. Yang Chun set off with Gong Sunling and rushed to the Conch underwater mansion again. Fatty Jing, who was waiting impatiently. The only one who could cope with it should be Yang Chun. Gong Sunling could make delicious food. The fatty would not be embarrassed. There were more than a dozen indigenous people who were taken away by Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. Two of them were famous chefs among the indigenous people. They had the cultivation base of the Yuanying stage. After the guidance of the head of the palace and several elders, coupled with the guidance of Gong Sunling on the way, they could satisfy the appetite of Fatty Jing Hu. The rest were the super masters among the indigenous people who had reached the level of human immortal. They followed them, naturally, to be able to cross the tribulation. Only by truly crossing the three disasters could one become a real human immortal. Naturally, these people were now the most loyal disciples of the Chunyang Palace. In this regard, the experience of the head of the palace and several elders was much richer than that of Yang Chun. After they had successfully crossed the tribulation, Chunyang Palace would add more than a dozen human immortal disciples, and the sect would slowly expand. The conch underwater mansion could accumulate one tribulation every 3 years, but Yang Chun also knew that when Jing, who was bored, he would consume the power of the tribulation. So now it was unknown how many people could meet the needs of the tribulation. For the time being, he would take this much, and if it was enough, he would come again next time. Unsurprisingly, Fatty Jing, who had been waiting anxiously. Yang Chun and the others had been gone for 10 years, and Fatty himself was too lazy to run out to look for them. The days were really hard to bear. As soon as Yang Chun and Gong Sunling appeared in the underwater mansion, the figure of Fatty came to their side. Why did it take so long? Fatty complained loudly in his mouth, but his eyes were already staring at the small cauldron in Gong Sunling's hand. This was a pot of delicious food cooked by Gong Sunling before she came in, just to let Fatty calm down. Now it seemed that the effect was quite good. Chapter 1579. Almost as fast as he could, a building similar to the pavilion that Yang Chun had entered the last time appeared beside Fatty. It was, of course, isolated from the sea. Then, Gong Sunling felt her vision blur and her hands became light. The small cauldron filled with food appeared on the table in the pavilion. The fat Jing, who had already sat down at the table, and he didn't care about Yang Chun and Gong Sunling. He didn't know where he got a set of bone tableware from. The fat hand holding 2 bone chopsticks had already reached into the cauldron and began to pick up the dishes. Looking at how skillful Fatty was using the chopsticks, it was estimated that Fatty had trained a lot during this time. The last time he came, Fatty didn't know how to use chopsticks. He didn't even know about the existence of chopsticks. Now he was so skillful. Sure enough, there was motivation. As a Sky Immortal expert, he had been training hard with chopsticks for so many years. It must have been hard on him. Next, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling watched Fatty Jing, who devoured the food in the small cauldron. From the beginning to the end, Fatty's movements were bold. He used chopsticks and spooned very skillfully. In just a moment, the small cauldron was turned upside down. Delicious! Of course, the food in the small cauldron was not enough to fill Fatty's teeth. But Fatty was still very satisfied with it. After carefully savoring it, he turned to Yang Chun and asked, "You promised to cook for me?" After asking this sentence, the fat man seemed to have begun to carefully observe Yang Chun, and then he exclaimed, "Hey, what's going on with you? How did your divine sense grow so fast?" With Fatty's level 8 Sky Immortal cultivation, it was not difficult to detect Yang Chen's current divine sense level. It had only been 10 years since they last met, but Yang Chen's divine sense had gone from level 5 Earth Immortal to level 1 Sky Immortal. Fatty had cultivated before. Even if he pulled up a seedling to help it grow, it wouldn't be so fast, right? Something happened to my cultivation, and it turned out like this. Yang Chen replied with a smile. His tone was a little helpless. Then he explained it was delayed. That's why I came now. Sorry to keep you waiting. You call such a good thing an accident? Why doesn't it fall on me? Jing, who was very dissatisfied with Yang Chen's helpless tone. After complaining twice, he said, "Since it's like this, then I'll forgive you. Where's the person who promised to cook for me?" "I brought them." Gong Sunling released the 2 chefs from the Mountain River geographical map. Both of them were at the nascent soul stage, so they didn't feel uncomfortable in the underwater palace. When they saw the Fatty, they immediately knew that this was the master they were going to follow in the future, so they hurriedly greeted him. Both of them had been carefully told that they must serve the fat man in front of them. The head of the palace even promised that as long as they could make the fat man satisfied, Chunyang Palace could accept their descendants as disciples. They had also heard that this Fatty had a way to help people go through tribulations. Whether it was for themselves or for the descendants of their families, it was necessary to please this heaven immortal Fatty. Seeing them appear, Jing, who waved his hand, and everyone involuntarily changed their positions. A huge palace suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It looked very tall and magnificent, but the decoration was very simple. It was estimated that this was the real core of the conch underwater palace. Hurry up, make something delicious for me to taste." Pointing to an empty room, the fat man ordered the 2 chefs. Jing, who was not stupid, he also knew that at this time, he had to try the craftsmanship of the 2. However, there was nothing in this room, not even a stove to let people cook. It was a bit difficult. Fortunately, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling were well considered. All the tools were prepared. All kinds of tableware, such as the stove, cooking utensils, and cooking utensils, were all made by Gao Yu, which was just used in this place. If the masters of the mortal world knew that the refining master Gao Yu made a move just to refine a set of kitchen utensils, it was not known how many people would beat their chests and stamp their feet, scolding the fat man for wasting natural resources. However, there was no one who was dissatisfied with this. The two chefs were also full of energy, waiting to serve this fatty grandpa well. Of course, Yang Chun prepared a lot of ingredients, and even generously sent at least 20 human immortal grade 8 beast corpses to the fat man Jing Hu. For the monster race of the same realm, these were great treasures, but for the fat man, they were just some rare ingredients. Go in that house over there, you guys go and play, don't worry about me. The fat man sat on the table at the entrance of the kitchen and didn't intend to move at all. He pointed to a lonely stone house in the distance and said, I used to think that the massage was comfortable, so I went in and consumed a lot of it. Now I don't know how much I have. You guys can use it. The only room in the spiritual realm that could bring down the 3 disasters was simply the massage room of the fat man Jing Hu. If this was known to the sect masters of the sect in the spiritual realm, it was estimated that they would kill the fat man at all costs to dispel the depression in their hearts. Want a massage? Can I give you 10 fairy beauties and massage you however you want? Why bother to consume this precious heavenly tribulation? It was estimated that the fat man was the only guy in the 3 realms who used the heavenly tribulation as a massage. This kind of prodigal move was even worse than Yang Chun taking a bath with the 4 Seas mysterious coral liquid. If he didn't know that he couldn't beat this guy now, Yang Chun would have wanted to teach the fat man a lesson. The indigenous masters brought by Yang Chun began to enter the stone house one by one. Yang Chun watched them pass the thunder tribulation, fire tribulation, and wind tribulation one by one, and became a real human immortal master. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. In his previous life, he knew that there was such a powerful room in the Conch underwater mansion, but he didn't know which great god refined this kind of magic weapon that could seize the heaven and earth. Rumors were rumors, and Yang Chun had not seen it with his own eyes in his previous life. Now that he was watching the rumors come true, the original trace of worry in his heart finally disappeared. The more than a dozen new human immortal native masters brought in by Gong Sunling couldn't believe what they had just experienced. They didn't know where they were, but they made themselves have a beautiful dream. Now, what everyone was most afraid of was that they didn't know when they would wake up from this dream and let them rejoice in vain. However, it was normal for one person to have a dream, but it was a bit abnormal for more than a dozen people to have the same dream at the same time. Everyone had reached this realm of cultivation, and it was easy to determine whether it was true or false. When they finally determined that they had become a real human immortal master, these more than a dozen native masters were so excited that they even cried on the spot. Chunyang Palace. It turned out that there really was such an earth-shattering method. Not to mention anything else, from now on, these people present would be the most loyal disciples of Chunyang Palace, and their family descendants would also become the most devout servants of Chunyang Palace. Chapter 1580. Soon Yang Chun and Gong Sunling chose to leave. There were 2 reasons for leaving. The first was that if Gong Sunling was in the underwater mansion, she would be flattered by Fatty Jing Hu all the way to coax her into making a few of her signature dishes. At this point, Fatty Jing Hu was simply self-taught and did not feel that there was anything wrong with a fairy immortal master speaking well to a human immortal junior. When a foodie fatty fawned on a good chef, the degree of flattery was beyond people's imagination. Gong Sunling was already annoyed and wanted to leave for a long time. Another reason to leave was that Yang Chun suddenly noticed that a magic weapon on his body had finally completed its transformation, but he did not want to show it in front of the fatty, so he left immediately. The magic weapon that had undergone the transformation was the pure bottle medicine garden, where Yang Chun had already crossed the tribulation of the tool spirit when he was in the mortal world. After a Zhu and a Bai in the medicine garden crossed their tribulation, Yang Chun sent the gourd left by the dragon clan to the medicine garden according to the agreement, so that a Zhu and a Bai could refine the gourd. The magic weapon of the dragon clan was the magic weapon of the dragon clan. It was definitely the limit of the magic weapon that could exist in the mortal world. With the two tool spirits of a Zhu and a Bai, who had already crossed their tribulation, plus Yang Chun almost sent half of the spiritual liquid accumulated in the Taishaman's secret plane, in addition to countless first with spiritual solution and second with spiritual solution. With the help of Yang Chen's own universe treasure-raising secret art, it took the two women almost 300 years to refine. During the refining period, Yang Chun could not use any of the functions of the medicine garden, except for being able to take some of the millennium elixirs on the first floor of the medicine garden. Even the 12 Penglai Divine Wood monsters lived in another ordinary medicine garden. Not long ago, Yang Chun noticed the movement of the medicine garden's pure bottle. That was a Zhu and a Bai informing Yang Chun that the Dragon Clan's gourd had been refined and integrated. It just so happened that the dozen or so natives had successfully transcended their tribulations, so Yang Chun immediately left with Gong Sunling without any hesitation. Under Jing, whose reluctant gaze, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling left the Conch underwater manor. Although Fatty's eyes were filled with reluctance, Yang Chen's heart did not soften at all. If another man stared at his wife like this, even if it was just for the sake of his wife's cooking, Yang Chun wouldn't be very happy. Of course, more than a dozen human immortals are hidden in Gong Sunling's geographical map of mountains and rivers. This is a secret weapon. With the current situation of Chunyang Palace, no one dares to know this secret. Otherwise, it will definitely lead to a thunderous attack. In the spiritual realm, the habit of fighting over good things was much crueler than in the mortal world. If it weren't for the fact that no one believed that Yang Chen's longevity extending pill would be useful to a spirit realm expert, it would have been snatched away immediately. Fortunately, the first batch of people who came to test the medicine were 4 Heaven Immortal experts, and they were Heaven Immortal experts from the 4 major sects. With the 4 of them as his backing, no matter how bold the others were, they wouldn't dare to make a move on Yang Chun, so they could only think of other ways. After leaving the underwater manor, Yang Chun directly brought Gong Sunling and rushed to Longxian. Longxian's huge body was now hidden in the sea, blocking the Heaven Immortal level spiritual vein. The huge spiritual energy was enjoyed by him alone, and he was comfortably crawling at the bottom of the sea, enjoying it. When Yang Chun came over, Longxian was too lazy to move. If it weren't for the fear that Longxian would have an uncomfortable memory, Yang Chun even wanted to put the current Yang family manor on Longxian's back again. Fortunately, there was still the Dragon Palace, a palace from the Dragon Clan. Longxian wouldn't reject it and let Yang Chun put the Dragon Palace on his back. The purified bottle her garden was taken out by Yang Chun, and he carefully observed it. While observing, he didn't forget to use the universe treasure-raising secret art for sacrificial refining. The universe treasure-raising secret art was a long-term process. It was like adding an extra layer of protection every time you play with it. The more times you play with it, the more the grade of the magic weapon will automatically improve. A Zhu and a Bai quickly appeared and bowed to Yang Chun. This time, the 2 women took a big advantage of him, and they had to thank him. The purified bottle her garden was originally refined by an expert, but the spirit could not be improved and stayed in the mortal world. After Yang Chen's continuous training, the 2 women reached the level of crossing their tribulation. The gourd of the Dragon Clan directly pushed the purified bottle herb garden to the ranks of the best quality. In the eyes of the experts in the spiritual realm, the refinement of the mortal world was not worth mentioning at all. Therefore, in the mortal world, magic treasures were not even divided into specific grades. At most, they would be given a general classification of high, medium, and low grade. At most, they would be given a rare grade. Only those left behind by the Dragon Clan could be called peerless grade. However, in the spiritual world, the direction of refining was the same as alchemy. There was a systematic direction, and a magic weapon that was refined had a real grade. In the same way, The refiner also had a specific classification, which was also divided into 9 grades, but each of them was divided into upper, middle, and lower grades. The magic weapon brought up from the mortal world, generally speaking, had to be at least a life source magic weapon of a human immortal master to be classified into the grade, but it was the lowest grade. As for the specific grades of the upper, middle, and lower grades, it still depended on the quality and difference of the magic weapon itself, but could not escape the scope of the first grade. According to the standards of the spiritual world, the purified bottle herb garden at this time had at least reached the level of the 3rd grade magic weapon. It could be imagined what kind of benefits a Zhu and Abai had gotten this time. Thanking Yang Chun was not abrupt at all. Good, good. Yang Chun couldn't help but be happy, and there was only praise in his mouth. Without going into the medicine garden to look carefully, Yang Chun could know the changes that had happened in the purified bottle herb garden through the spiritual awareness communication with a Zhu and Abai. Although it has only been less than 300 years, all the medicinal materials growing in the purified bottle have increased their age by 1,000 years. This was another benefit after the integration of the dragon gourd. Although it consumed a lot of spiritual liquid, compared to the increase in age of these medicinal materials, even if it cost twice as much spiritual liquid, Yang Chun would be happy. The characteristics of the dragon gourd that could hold all the liquids in the world were still retained. The various spiritual liquids that had been stored in it before, the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid, and the distiller's yeast of the jade dragon wine were all there. There was no loss at all, and the purified bottle herb garden still had the function of holding all the liquids. Another change was the space. The space of the medicine garden had expanded by many times. At least a Zhu and Abai did not know where the limit was. It was estimated that it would not be a problem to hold a real ocean. In that case, just in the sea, let's turn the small pond in the medicine garden into a real ocean. After Yang Chen learned about it through a Zhu and Abai, he was happy and immediately assigned the first task to a Zhu and Abai. In the past, the space in the medicine garden was too small. Even if he added the 10th water true essence and added seawater to raise some seabed spiritual creatures, it was just a bigger pond. Now Yang Chun was ambitious and wanted to turn it into a real ocean. Chapter 1581. The dragon gourd's seawater was almost infinite, and there was no problem with the pure bottle medicine garden now. A Zhu and Abai promised and began to collect seawater from the bottom of the sea to expand the ocean in the medicine garden. If someone is now observing the ocean and the spiritual world very attentively, they will definitely find that no matter where the ocean is, as long as it is in the same water area as the sea, all the boundless ocean levels have dropped a few points in less than a day. Perhaps people will not notice this at all. They will only think that this is the normal ebb and flow of the tide. No one will find that countless seawater has been collected by a Zhu and Abai into the pure bottle medicine garden. A Zhu and Abai were not only collecting seawater, but also with the help of Yang Chun. A large number of marine creatures at the bottom of the sea were collected. In this way, a complete marine ecosystem could be formed, which was also of great benefit to the growth of marine phase. Yang Chun and Gong Sunling stayed in the sea for almost 2 months. During these 2 months, a Zhu and Abai have been collecting seawater. In the pure bottle herb garden, there was also a huge ocean no less than the parting hatred sea. At first glance, the sea surface was sparkling and boundless, just like a real sea. The standard of collecting seawater was based on whether Yang Chun could pick it up and carry it as a reference. Since an ocean could be formed in the pure bottle medicine garden, and Yang Chun now had the yellow turban strongman body refining technique in the realm of penetrating the earth, he could naturally pick it up without using spiritual power. The yellow turban strongman body refining technique could not be broken through by just cultivating the secret arts inside. Just like normal muscle exercise, even the strongest muscles, if there is no continuous stimulation and there is no large amount of exercise to support it, it will slowly atrophy and its strength will be reduced. When he was in the mortal world, he didn't have to consider this problem for the time being. Just by relying on various cultivation methods, he could give the body enough exercise, enough to support the needs of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. But in the spiritual world, especially after reaching the realm of penetrating the earth. The original method of only cultivating the internal force and not the external force would not work. In the past, there had never been a magic treasure heavy enough to give Yang Chun this kind of stimulation. Even Ho Yun's golden staff, which weighed 1,000,000 pounds, was no more than 30,000 pounds. At most, it could adapt to the needs of the 10,000-pound strength realm. Now, they couldn't even meet Ho Yun's training needs, let alone Yang Chun. However, with the herb garden, the ocean in the bottle was another matter. Yang Chun could completely control a Zhu and a Bai to put the entire weight of the entire medicine garden on Yang Chun. One had to know that this was the weight of several continents and a real ocean. Even Ho Yun couldn't lift it now. Only someone like Long Xian, who only saw merit as a burden and didn't see anything else as a burden, could truly shoulder this burden. After collecting seawater for more than 20 days, the weight of the bottle was just right for Yang Chun. It was not too light and could achieve the purpose of strength training. For the current Yang Chun, the bottle medicine garden was not only a medicine garden, but it also had the function of a dumbbell. Since then, Yang Chun's hand was always playing with a small emerald bottle, never leaving it. Those who knew thought that Yang Chun had been sacrificially refining his own medicine garden, and those who didn't know thought that this was a jade carving of Yang Chun. An alchemist attaching importance to his own medicine garden did not seem to be something worth making a fuss about. Gong Sunling knew a little bit of the inside story, and she was very curious and tried to weigh the jade bottle. Under the weight, the bottle did not move in Yang Chun's hand. It wasn't until Gong Sunling borrowed the power of the Mountain River geographical map that she lifted the bottle with both hands. After really knowing the weight of the bottle, Gong Sunling couldn't help but spit out her tongue playfully. She was speechless at the abnormal physical strength of her husband. "You can't pinch me." Gong Sunling was alone with her husband, and it seemed that she had become a little girl who was spoiled by Yang Chun. Her tone of speech was a lot more delicate, and at this time she spoke in a spoiled tone, half coquettish and half reminding. Generally speaking, one hand had to hold this huge weight, and the other hand had to hold Gong Sunling's little hand. One side had to do his best, and the other side had to be gentle and careful. Ordinary people really couldn't do this. Fortunately, Yang Chun had already understood the truth of lifting heavy things as light when he was in the sea strength realm. At this moment, under his careful cultivation, his hands did not affect each other at all, as if the bottle had almost no weight. You don't have to use your beheading immortal blade when you fight in the future. Looking at Yang Chun's relaxed appearance, Gong Sunling said with some envy, "As long as you throw the bottle over, you can smash people to death." This was not a joke. The weight of the sea could really crush an ordinary human immortal cultivator to death. Even the earth immortal and sky immortal, if their cultivation was slightly worse, they might not be able to bear such a weight. On the other hand, Yang Chun not only had to bear the weight of the bottle, but also had to maintain the coordination of his body. He could not let people see any abnormality, so he had to consider this when doing all kinds of actions. He used spiritual power to suspend himself in the air to bear such weight without crushing the ground. Even if Yang Chun didn't take the initiative to cultivate at this moment, just walking around with the bottle was already a stunning cultivation. Why don't you also practice this kind of body refining technique? Yang Chun didn't hide it from Gong Sunling and the others, and smiled when he heard the words. Gong Sunling suddenly shook her head like a rattle. What a joke. Like Yang Chun, who turned into a gorilla after cultivating for a while. For a woman who loved beauty, it was better to kill them. How could this kind of body refining technique that destroyed the figure be more suitable than the body refining technique that Yang Chun gave to Fairy Chang'e in the past? Gong Sunling would not consider it, even if she was beaten to death. The couple talked and laughed, and quickly rushed back to Chunyang Palace. Gong Sunling went to meet Gao Yu, but Yang Chun took more than a dozen new human immortal masters to meet the master of the palace and other elders. Seeing more than a dozen real human immortal masters, the excitement on the faces of several elders could not be hidden. Since then, Chunyang Palace had another secret weapon. Even if it took 3 years to create a human immortal master, As time went by in the future, this force would become more and more unbearable. Most importantly, with this channel, the natives of the spiritual world would completely worship Chunyang Palace as a holy land in the future. No matter what Chunyang Palace wanted to do, there would be countless support from the lowest level. The growth of Chunyang Palace in the spiritual world was no longer a mirage. Chapter 1582. One of the tokens to enter and exit the underwater mansion was handed over to the head of the palace. The next time he went, there was no need for Yang Chun to come out personally. It was enough for Gong Sunling to bring the head of the palace. Now Yang Chen's top priority was to try to find a way to consume the spiritual awareness. How can I consume a lot of spiritual awareness? With his wives and concubines, Yang Chun communicated with them in a tone of discussion, for fear of causing the women's uneasiness. Consumption of spiritual awareness? Listening to Yang Chen's question, Gao Yu, Gong Sunling, and Tao Junkie began to ponder. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were okay. This was the first time that Tao Junkie knew that someone needed to consume their spiritual awareness to keep themselves safe. Before, she simply thought that Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base rose too fast. Sacrificial refining, a magic weapon. Gao Yu herself was a refining master in the mortal world. Although she did not determine what grade of refining master she was after arriving in the spiritual world, from her own professional point of view, she also knew that a large number of sacrificial refining magic weapons was a way to consume spiritual awareness. Well, there is a way. Yang Chen nodded. The more advanced the sacrificial refining magic weapon, the more it would consume. In the same way, the higher the difficulty of sacrificial refining, the more it would consume. Refining the most difficult medicinal pill, Tao Junkie was wholeheartedly cultivating and had no distractions. She did not work on these trivial things that she thought were trivial. Anyway, the profound heaven sect was rich, and the magic weapons and medicinal pills used by the disciples were specially refined. She only needed to concentrate on cultivation. Now that Yang Chun was smelling it, she certainly answered what Yang Chun was best at. It's also a way. Yang Chun continued to nod. Speaking of which, Tao Junkie was right. The most difficult medicinal pill to refine was the best if it was beyond his current level. This required a lot of spiritual awareness to control, and the effect was not generally good. Some formations require a lot of spiritual awareness to control. Gong Sunling also started from her own expertise and found a way to consume spiritual awareness. Formation. Yang Chen's eyes suddenly lit up. Before this, he had thought of many methods. It was not that he had never thought of array formations, but he was limited to the circle of array formations. He had not thought of anything more. Now that Gong Sunling had suddenly upgraded the array formation, it made Yang Chun recall an ancient memory. There were simply too many memories from his previous life. Not every big or small matter could be clearly recalled at any time. Sometimes, Yang Chun needed an opportunity or a small hint to find the right one from his vast memories. Back in the day, there was a powerful fellow in the spirit realm who was trapped in a certain sealing formation, unable to break free. Later on, at some point in time, a lucky fellow discovered the sealed area. Then, after expending a great deal of effort, he managed to open the sealing formation and saw that powerful expert. In order to repay the grace of saving him, that powerful expert willingly protected that lucky fellow for 1,000 years before ascending. However, that should be a long time later. Moreover, that lucky fellow was actually not a master who provoked trouble. So basically, he quietly advanced his realm and ascended to the immortal world. It was not until he arrived in the immortal world that Yang Chun found an opportunity to chat with that lucky fellow and learned about this matter. The reason why Yang Chun remembered the sealing formation now was that unlocking the sealing formation required a very powerful spiritual awareness. At that time, that lucky fellow's cultivation was not strong enough, so it took him more than 2,000 years to unlock this formation. However, It was precisely because of these 2,000 years of crazy tempering of his spiritual awareness that fellow could be regarded as a small expert in the immortal world with amazing achievements. Now that Yang Chun had a lot of spiritual awareness, wasn't the sealing formation a ready-made good thing prepared for Yang Chun? The problem was that it seemed that the location of the sealing formation was obtained from a magic weapon that was accidentally bought at an auction. Moreover, it was something that happened many years later. It was not an easy task for Yang Chun to know the location of the sealing formation. However, it was not completely impossible. According to that lucky fellow, the magic weapon that he bought in the past was actually auctioned many times in the auction. At first, that magic weapon looked really scary, but after buying it, one would find that they had been deceived. After many people were deceived, there was a time when that magic weapon had been sold for hundreds of years. Each time, it was reduced to a warm-up before the opening of several major auctions, just like the sky measuring ruler that Yang Chun bought in the past. If this was the case, then Yang Chun might as well stroll around the major auctions to see if he could be lucky enough to buy that magic weapon. Anyway, in recent years, Yang Chun could still use his spiritual awareness seeds to restore some of his spiritual awareness. For the time being, he did not have to worry too much. I have a way. Yang Chun finally smiled. The relaxed smile from the bottom of his heart made the three women finally put down the big stone in their hearts. Since their husband had a way, then they did not have to worry about cultivation problems. Although he already had a direction, Yang Chun still had to visit the major sect in the near future. Since the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra had been passed on to Tao Junki, then Shi Wushuang and the Murong sisters could not be left out. Moreover, with their help, it could also consume a lot of spiritual awareness. Since it was good for himself and his women, Yang Chun would certainly not let it go. After explaining his plan, none of the three women had any objections. However, before Yang Chun left, he still stayed with the three women for a whole year to thoroughly consolidate the spiritual awareness of the 8th grade of the Earth Immortal realm from the Supreme Mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. Before Yang Chun left, the three women returned to the back of Longxian and entered the Dragon Palace to cultivate. The current spirit vein in Chunyang Palace was only a human immortal level spirit vein. The sect had more than a dozen human immortal experts. They were embarrassed to compete with others for spiritual energy. It was safer and more at ease on Longxian's back. Yang Chun had settled down in the sect. The higher-ups of the profound heaven sect in the immortal world were already waiting anxiously. Even the new Jade Emperor was a little anxious. The consciousness of a great principal golden immortal that had been sent down to the mortal world at a great cost occupied an immortal body that had been sent down many years ago. Logically speaking, since the consciousness had been sent down in advance, there should be news coming up after so many years. However, there was still no news until now. Such an expert did not have to worry about any experts in the mortal world at all. They could simply find a junior who was about to ascend and force him to send a message to the spiritual world. After reaching the spiritual world, the profound heaven sect would immediately send someone to ascend and send the message to the immortal world. However, there was still no news until now. Could it be that there was some trouble? Your Majesty, don't worry. Did you forget the lesson after you ascended from the mortal world to the spiritual world? The Jade Emperor was anxious. Naturally, there were people to help him. Soon, someone comforted him. Chapter 1583. When newcomers from the mortal world ascended to the spiritual realm, they would always be taught a lesson by a group of experts to let them know the rules of the spiritual realm. At the same time, it would also allow them to adapt to the spiritual pressure of the spiritual realm. Generally speaking, this process would take at least a few years before the newcomer could arrive at the reception town. Like Yang Chen's family who came out so easily, there was no one before or after. Thinking of this reason, the higher-ups of the Xiantian sect, including the Jade Emperor, heaved a sigh of relief. It had only been a few years since they descended. Perhaps the person who helped to send the message was still lying in the forest recuperating. It was normal for there to be no news, but it would be strange if there was news. At this time, everyone was no longer as anxious as before. They recovered their demeanor of experts and slowly waited with a relaxed heart. Some even began to reflect that they had lost their composure because they were too anxious about the foundation of the sect. This was the first time that Yang Chun officially visited another sect after arriving in the spiritual realm. Of course, it was only limited to the 4 sects. For the time being, this large area was still the territory of the Dao sects. If he wanted to go to the demon clan or the demon sect, he would have to take a big detour. The closest one was the Blue Cloud sect. When Yang Chun signed up at the mountain gate, he was received with a grand reception by the Blue Cloud sect. Sun Qingshua's status in the Blue Cloud sect in the spiritual realm was not that famous. Even Sun Qingshua's master, Elder Hua Wanting, was only a newcomer who had ascended for a few hundred years. She had just gained a foothold in the sect, so she could not let Sun Qingxue enjoy any special treatment. However, Yang Chen's name was linked to the prolongation pill. A heaven immortal expert in the sect had taken Yang Chen's prolongation pill and helped Yang Chun run around. That was a heaven immortal expert who was a big figure in any sect. The disciples who received them could not be presumptuous. Soon, Yang Chun was invited to the guest hall that was only used by distinguished guests. Then, someone immediately went to inform Sun Qingxue. Yang Chen's reason for coming was to meet his wife, not to visit the sect. However, while informing Sun Qingxue, the disciples did not forget to inform the elders of the sect. Treat them with courtesy. If their requests aren't excessive, I'll agree to them all. The elders in charge of the sect also knew the importance of the prolongation pill. However, a disciple from a third-rate sect, no matter how talented he was as an alchemist, was not worthy of the Blue Cloud sect putting down their pride to curry favor with him. It would be fine as long as they showed enough goodwill. As for the work of winning over, on the one hand, it was handed over to Sun Qingxue, and, on the other hand, it was handed over to Sect Master Lu, Elder Shi, and Elder Hua, who had already ascended for hundreds of years, who were acquaintances of Yang Chun. When the big shots came forward, they would not scare the little fellow. As soon as Sun Qingxue saw him, she threw herself into the arms of Yang Chun. Even though she was already a human immortal master, her mentality was still the same as that of the little girl in the past. She held Yang Chun for a long time and did not let go. Happy tears flowed, as if the two had been separated for many years. In fact, it had only been more than 10 years since they arrived in the spiritual world. After the joy of meeting, Sun Qingxue did not forget to tell Yang Chun about her experience in the sect. Fortunately, hundreds of years ago, Sect Master Lu, Elder Shi, and Elder Hua, the elders had ascended one after another and had already established a foothold in the spiritual world. Naturally, as a pro-disciple of Hua Wanting, Sun Qingxue's life in the sect was relatively better. Originally, Sun Qingxue was a rich woman. With Yang Chun there, how could he let his women be wronged? Even if there was no sect, Sun Qingxue could live a relaxed life. What's more, there was also the care of the elders. As soon as she arrived in the sect, Sun Qingxue did not encounter any difficulties. She smoothly had everything of her own and cultivated normally. A big sect had the benefits of a big sect, but it also had the rules of a big sect. When the newcomers came, generally within 100 years, they still had to learn honestly in the sect. Learning more advanced cultivation methods, a higher level of insight, all kinds of alchemy, refining, array assistance, and so on, were all higher than in the mortal world. These learning time alone occupied most of the time. Those with average cultivation aptitude would face more troubles, the choice of cultivation methods, the choice of a master, and so on. Especially the change of mentality after ascending to the spiritual world. Everything had to start from the bottom, starting from the lowest disciple. Many people had to adapt to this, and it took a lot of time. Not only that, like Sun Qingxue, her own master had already ascended, it was naturally easy. Those whose master had not ascended had to worship a new master. Otherwise, there would be no one to guide them, and it would be difficult for them to cultivate. The interpersonal relationships of a big sect needed to be coordinated in all aspects. In 100 years, they could only be familiar with each other in the sect. Sect Master Lu was the master of the mortal world. After ascending, his status was naturally different. Similarly, Elder Shiryinha was the hall master of the law enforcement hall in the mortal world, and Elder Hua also worked hard to squeeze into the ranks of the core elders, especially these people who came with the great credit of destroying the Taishaman, so their status was even more different. Of course, everything went smoothly for Sun Qingxue. She had her master and several core elders who had a high status to take care of her. In addition, Sun Qingxue's family was rich and generous. She was born in an official's family, so she was the best at dealing with interpersonal relationships. Especially, her cultivation aptitude was excellent. In the sect, she was already the leader among the younger disciples. The only thing that made Sun Qingxue unhappy was that she might not see her husband for 100 years. Now that Yang Chun personally came to the door, Sun Qingxue, of course, was smiling and wished that she could hang on Yang Chen's body and never leave again. As for being seen by other fellow apprentices, it was not a big deal. Now Sun Qingxue was the junior sister apprentice. Her seniority was small, and she was young. Naturally, she had the capital to do something outrageous. Next, it was natural that Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue were in Sun Qingxue's room for double cultivation. After comforting Sun Qingxue, Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue's spiritual awareness double cultivation. Overnight, the spiritual awareness skyrocketed to the 8th grade of the Earth Immortal, which made Sun Qingxue understand that Yang Chun must have a problem in his spiritual awareness cultivation. She pulled herself together and used all her skills to help Yang Chun reduce his spiritual awareness cultivation. Unfortunately, the effect of her alone was not very obvious. In order to let Sun Qingxue thoroughly consolidate her spiritual awareness cultivation, Yang Chun also needed to stay with Sun Qingxue for a few months. At the same time, he could also take a look at the Blue Cloud sex auction and see if he could be lucky enough to encounter the magic weapon he was looking for. Surprisingly, Yang Chen's request to participate in the Blue Cloud sex internal auction was not approved. Even if Hua Wanning came forward, the result was the same. In the spiritual world, they still had no right to speak and could only express their regret to Yang Chun. Rest assured, it's not a big deal. In the face of Sun Qingxue's expression of not giving her husband a good thing, Yang Chun laughed indifferently and then asked with a smile, "I don't know if I auction a 4 turns life-prolonging pill. Will there be people who will politely invite me to participate?" Chapter 1584. A 4th grade prolonging life pill gave the 10th grade Heaven Immortal Elder at least hundreds of years of lifespan, which had been personally tested by 4 Heaven Immortal Masters. If such a medicinal pill could not enter the auction of the Blue Cloud sect, then the Blue Cloud sect must be joking. Although the Blue Cloud sect had a 7th grade alchemist master, none of them could come up with a prolonging life pill. Now in the entire spiritual world, there was only one person who could have a prolonging life pill, and that was Yang Chun. Some people, relying on their seniority, wanted to teach Yang Chun a little lesson on this, but it was really a wrong idea. In the big sect, some things were inevitable. Some of the guys whose qualifications were not particularly good, but the seniors always had such an unspeakable resentment towards Sun Qingxue, who had good qualifications and could always get the favor of the sect. Because of this, Sun Qingxue's request to take Yang Chun to the internal auction of the Blue Cloud sect was directly rejected, and even Elder Hua Wanting came forward was also rebuffed. Such a small thing, if Sect Master Lu had to come forward, it would be ugly. Therefore, Sun Qingxue could only express her powerlessness to Yang Chun. In the end, it was because Sun Qingxue's current qualifications were too shallow. Everyone was a master who had ascended, and the person in charge had at least been in the spiritual world for 1,000 years or more. They were all the elders of the elders. In terms of seniority, they were all at the level of the great martial uncle. Putting up this posture, Sun Qingxue was really not good. When he was in the mortal world, Yang Chun had encountered the same thing in the Blue Cloud sect, but that was because someone wanted to hit Sun Qingxue with a bit of jealousy. This time, he didn't know if it was the same reason. Anyway, it happened again. Yang Chun had expected it, and threw the problem back directly with a light sentence. 1 4 revolutions life, prolonging pill, take it or leave it. If he wanted it, He would have to politely invite Yang Chun to attend the auction. Someone in the sect was targeting her and her husband. Of course, Sun Qingxue was not someone who was easy to deal with. She immediately spread the news. Fortunately, Sun Qingxue was quite popular among her fellow disciples of the same generation. In the past few hundred years, many people in the same sect knew of Yang Chen's name. Therefore, the news soon spread throughout the entire Blue Cloud sect. This time, the disciples who were in charge of the Blue Cloud sect's auction were in a predicament. At the end of the day, they were still narrow-minded. They were jealous of Sun Qingxue's smooth sailing in the sect. Originally, they just wanted to stop Sun Qingxue and suppress the arrogance of this genius disciple. They didn't expect her to throw out such a big killing weapon. The name of the prolonging life pill had long spread in the spiritual realm. Many people dreamed of getting their hands on one, but they couldn't. Not to mention other sect, there were at least 50 old heaven immortal monsters in the Blue Cloud sect who desperately wanted to get their hands on the prolonging life pill. If these people knew that there was a prolonging life pill that was supposed to be auctioned but was canceled because they didn't have the right to attend the auction, not to mention the few people in charge of the auction, even their masters and grandmasters wouldn't feel good about it. Everyone knew how precious the prolonging life pill was. According to the news from the mortal world, there were only a few demonic beads that could be used to refine the prolonging life pill, and almost all of them were in the hands of Yang Chun. Excluding the consumption of Yang Chen's alchemy, it was already the most that Yang Chun had in his hands, 300 of them. Each of them represented 1,000 years of lifespan. If they were in Yang Chen's shoes, they wouldn't sell one without an urgent reason. This was great. The instigators immediately became anxious. Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue were sitting on the fishing platform. They almost never left the house and cultivated together. Even if they wanted to persuade others, it would be difficult. Who asked while wanting, who was the closest to Sun Qingxue, to come forward and be rejected? This time, it was really uncomfortable. While the few guys were hesitating, a piece of news completely became the straw that broke the camel's back. The two heaven immortal ancestors of the sect who were in closed-door cultivation got the news from somewhere and actually came out. Moreover, they wanted to participate in the auction of the prolonging life pill. It's over. After hearing this news, the hearts of the few guys sank. It wasn't a big problem to give the younger generation a little trouble to let them know how to respect their elders. But if they delayed the life and death of the old ancestor, he believed that before he died, the old ancestor definitely wouldn't mind bringing one or two of his disciples along. Anyway, they were going to die. What was there to worry about? It couldn't be helped. The few people who had mercilessly rejected Sun Qingxue's request came together in front of Sun Qingxue's small courtyard. They knocked on the door politely and respectfully invited Yang Chun to participate in the internal auction of the Blue Cloud sect in 10 days. To the surprise of the few guys, Yang Chun, the younger generation, was quite easy to talk to. He didn't make things difficult at all and directly agreed to their request. The only requirement was that the prolonging life pill would be taken out at that time, and that the auction price was specified. Was this a condition? It was simply a matter of course, wasn't it? Coming out of Sun Qingxue's small courtyard, the few people looked at each other, but at the same time, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Then, there was a burst of regret in their hearts. What the hell was this? When they politely asked to participate, they were not willing. In the end, they didn't speak, and they had to turn around and use a more polite attitude to ask them to participate. Why did they bother? If they were to use a word to describe it, it was clearly the word cheap. Not only that, they bowed to Yang Chun because Yang Chun had the prolonging life pill in his hands, but they still had to apologize to another person. Sun Qingxue's master, Hua Wanting, also personally came to persuade them at that time, but was mercilessly rejected by them. It must be known that Hua Wanting was the core elder of the mortal world, but her qualifications were not old enough. Now, they bowed to Sun Qingxue, but they had to bow to Hua Wanting. Otherwise, when Sect Master Lu took over as the Sect Master of the Blue Cloud sect in the spiritual world in the future, Elder Hua would gain power, and they would never have a good life. Such a small thing as teaching the rules may not be cared about. Almost all the senior people would do this, but face-to-face slapping was another matter, and it couldn't be taken lightly. The whole thing even made the senior members of the Blue Cloud sect in the spiritual world have a new way of thinking. Ordinary disciples had to rely on this kind of internal healthy competition to stimulate their growth, but some disciples must be exceptions. In the past, these exceptional disciples were only the real core elders of the mortal world who had such treatment, but now they had to add Sun Qingxue, the most amazing fifth-grade alchemist master in the mortal world. Presumably, when she ascended to the spiritual world, she would not let others down. At this point, Yang Chun didn't even have to show too much. As long as he held the prolonging life pill in his hand, it was enough. Chapter 1585. 10 days later, the auction had become an event that many Blue Cloud sect disciples were looking forward to. What made people speechless was that this time, because there were too many disciples who wanted to participate in the auction, the Blue Cloud sect had to control the number of people. Some Blue Cloud sect disciples also had no chance to participate because of this. It was very ironic that the disciples of the Blue Cloud sect could not participate in the auction, and Yang Chun, an outsider who was rejected at the beginning and then politely invited, was treated as a guest of honor. This was the reality of the cultivation world. However, those who were rejected by the Blue Cloud sect disciples did not feel too wronged. Many people heard that there was a longevity pill and intended to gain some experience. Everyone knew that even if they were rich, it was impossible for them to get it. That longevity pill was clearly prepared for the two ancestors who had come out of seclusion, and no one dared to grab it from them. 10 days later, Yang Chen sat in the Blue Cloud sect's internal auction house, second only to the Blue Cloud sect's master's box, and participated in the entire auction from beginning to end. The magic weapon that Yang Chen was looking forward to did not appear. This was not surprising. If Yang Chen could encounter that magic weapon in an auction casually, then Yang Chen's luck would be a bit too good. Such a great luck against the heavens would hurt his character. In the future, he did not know what price he would have to pay to make up for it. For the other auction items, Yang Chen was interested in other than the two kinds of medicinal materials and a kind of fire seed. The Blue Cloud sect seemed to take care of Yang Chen intentionally. As soon as Yang Chen joined the auction, the price only rose slightly for a few rounds, and the two kinds of medicinal materials and the fire seed were not higher than the base price. As for the other magic weapon cultivation method materials, Yang Chen just looked and did not participate. Sun Qingxue now had the first wood true secret art and the second wood true secret art, and the ultimate demonized demon vine had not been completely refined. Within 200 or 300 years, there was no need to consider other things, so she did not make a move. If Yang Chen hadn't insisted on coming to the auction, Sun Qingxue wouldn't have been interested in attending. Her husband had already prepared everything she needed. Why would she need to try her luck at the auction? The 4 Revolutions Prolonging Life pill had appeared as the final item of the auction. Up until the appearance of the Prolonging Life pill, the two old ancestors, who had come out of seclusion, did not show any expression. It was clear that they had come for the Prolonging Life pill. Yang Chen's starting price for the longevity pill was 5 kinds of 6th-grade fire seeds in the spiritual world. The fire seeds of the spiritual world were of the same origin as those of the mortal world, but they had been baptized by heavenly tribulation. In terms of grade, they were 2 grades higher than those of the mortal world. The 1st-grade fire seed in the spiritual world was at least equivalent to the 3rd-grade fire seed in the mortal world. The 6th-grade fire seed in the spiritual world, in terms of power alone, was already comparable to the power of the 8th-grade fire seed in the mortal world. Unfortunately, the highest level of the fire seed in the mortal world was the 7th grade, and there was no higher fire seed than the 7th grade. After Yang Chen's fire seed was upgraded by the white fire seed. In fact, it only reached the power of the lower grade fire seed in the spiritual world. From the beginning of the mortal world, Yang Chen had the habit of collecting fire seeds. At this point, people who knew Yang Chen or had heard of Yang Chen were very clear. It was not surprising that Yang Chen only wanted fire seeds and did not want spirit stones. The scene of the two ancestors snatching the prolonging life pill that everyone expected did not happen. After the auctioneer announced the starting price, the two just looked at each other, and then one of them nodded heavily, and the other quoted the price of 8 kinds of fire seeds. Then there was an awkward silence, and then the auctioneer announced the deal as quickly as possible. The two ancestors took the 4th grade prolonging life pill at a tacit price. When they left, Yangchen also heard the 2 fairy immortal masters saying thank you in his ear. Husband, how do the 2 ancestors divide the prolonging life pill? Sun Qingxue never worried about not having enough medicinal pills, so she discussed the final ownership of the prolonging life pill with Yangchen. A medicinal pill was obviously not enough for the 2 of them. Divide it equally, Yangchen replied with a smile. At the auction house, he could see that the 2 fairy immortal masters had not completely reached the end of their lives, and at least had a few decades of lifespan. A prolonging life pill was divided into 2 parts, and everyone could basically increase their lifespan by hundreds of years. With these hundreds of years, it might be enough for them to find a way to improve their cultivation base and further extend their lifespan. Sometimes, desperate people just lacked a little bit of hope. With hope, there would be confidence, and with confidence, there would be a great possibility for their cultivation base to improve. This prolonging life pill really gave the 2 fairy immortal masters this kind of hope. With hundreds of years of lifespan, there would be more time to complete some efforts that could not be completed in dozens of years, and success was almost inevitable. In this regard, the top management of the Blue Cloud sect did a good job. Yangchen believed that the 2 fairy immortal masters did not come out of seclusion for no reason. It must have been a choice made by the sect's top management after analyzing the greatest effect that a medicinal pill could bring. Compared to giving an expert who could not possibly improve a few hundred years of lifespan, giving 2 experts with high hopes of improving at the same time was the greatest benefit that the medicinal pill could bring to the sect. It was just strange that the Blue Cloud sect did not come forward to talk to Yangchen face to face. Could it be that they never thought of getting the prolonging life pill directly from Yangchen? Yangchen's doubts did not last long. When the Blue Cloud sect's people came to hand over the medicinal fire seeds to Yangchen, Yangchen discovered that it was actually an acquaintance, the mortal world's Blue Cloud sect's sect master Lu. Grandmaster Yang, I trust you have been well. Sect Master Lu and Yangchen had not seen each other for hundreds of years, and when they met, they greeted each other. After the greetings, Sect Master Lu first handed over the things, and then revealed the real intention. Grandmaster Yang, this prolonging life pill, if my sect wants to continue to buy, what conditions do I need? Sect Master Lu was familiar with Yangchen's character, and knew that he was not a person who beat around the bush and directly expressed it. That's right. Yangchen listened to Sect Master Lu's intention to buy, and his heart breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that the big sect didn't need his own medicinal pill. Now, Yangchen could only come up with one kind of prolonging life pill. Whether it was the questioning inner heart pill or the spirit congealing pill, there were masters in the spiritual world who could refine it. The real exclusive mastery of Yangchen was only the prolonging life pill. Chunyang Palace cannot be oppressed by any sect for 1,000 years and develop quietly. Yangchen was equally direct and unceremoniously said to Sect Master Lu, every 50 years, this younger generation junior will come up with a 4 revolutions prolonging life pill as a reward. This condition, the 5 major sects are the same. How about it? Deal. Sect Master Lu had already been authorized before coming. When she heard Yangchen's conditions, she did not hesitate to agree directly. Chapter 1586. For the peaceful development of Chunyang Palace, Yangchen almost took out his family property. The Sunset Rock was the territory of Linyang River and Parting Hatred Sea, and Yangchen paid the price of 10 prolonging life pills. Now, in order to fight for 1,000 years of development, each of the 5 major sects had to pay 24-turn prolonging life pills to Yangchen as a protection fee. It couldn't be helped. The strength of the Xintian sect in the spiritual world was still the first in Dao sects. Except for some restraint, because of the involvement of the Taishaman, it was still a first-class super sect. It was impossible to omit the Xiantian sect to pay the protection fee. Chunyang Palace was still too weak and could not withstand too much wind and rain. With the care of the 5 major sect of Dao sects, at least on the surface, there would be no blind guys coming to make trouble. Chunyang Palace only needed to guard against some lone gangs or some bold guys, and the difficulty of development could be reduced by 90%. These protection fees must be paid. Several major sects could also guess Yang Chen's plan, so they all tacitly did not reach out to the prolonging life pills. Otherwise, with the reputation of the prolonging life pills, it was unknown how many people had come to attack Yang Chen. Based on this tacit understanding between the two sides, Chunyang Palace could get the territory for more than 10 years without any strong guys coming to make trouble. In this regard, Yang Chen had to be grateful, so he was willing to pay the protection fee. As for the prolonging life pill, it may be limited for others, but for Yang Chen, with the core of the Demon Continent, he could always take out one every 100 years. Chunyang Palace could not monopolize the prolonging life pills. If they were so stingy, the final result would only be being robbed by the masters. Relying on the pure Yang Palace's current dozen or so Miao Rin Xian, it was not enough for a few Earth Immortal masters to make a move unless the people of the pure Yang Palace were willing to live the kind of precarious life of hiding. Even if he could escape, it would only be an expedient measure. A man's wealth was his own ruin. If he didn't take out such a powerful item, he would be courting death. Therefore, Yang Chen was very smart at the beginning. He first tested the medicine and then changed the site. He just wanted to send a message to all parties that Chunyang Palace would not monopolize everything. None of the 4 great sects could monopolize the benefits of the prolonging life pill. The principle was the same. You wouldn't get fat if you ate alone, especially if it wasn't something that belonged to you. If Yang Chen was from the Blue Cloud sect, there would be no problem. However, Yang Chen was not a member of the Blue Cloud sect, and Chunyang Palace was not a vassal sect of the Blue Cloud sect. Therefore, the Blue Cloud sect was not justified in taking action. Therefore, Yang Chen could only consider the 4 great sects and share the benefits. Anyway, they already had a good cooperative relationship in the mortal world. Especially now that the situation of Chunyang Palace could not threaten any sect, it was a win-win situation for everyone to cooperate. The Xiantian sect had to be considered. As long as the Xiantian sect in the spiritual realm was still there, they could not avoid it no matter what. Therefore, Yang Chen mentioned the 5 great sects, including the Xiantian sect. As for how to collude with the Xiantian sect and how to solve the problem of killing Zhu Yixian, it was Yang Chen's own business. The others would not help Yang Chen. However, if the Xiantian sect wanted to kill Yang Chen, it was another matter. The 4 great sects would not allow the Xiantian sect to do so. Therefore, the final result must be that Yang Chen would pay a certain price, and everyone would take a step back and live in peace. When there were still prolonging life pills, no one in the Dao sects would openly attack Yang Chen. This was the ideal situation. The experience in the Blue Cloud sect was relatively smooth, and then Yang Chen rushed to the Green Jade Immortal Island. The Green Jade Immortal Island in the spiritual realm was also by the sea, but in addition to the archipelago in the sea, it also occupied a large territory by the sea. Shi Shanshan's life was much better than Sun Qingshua's. After the Lord Tantai and Elder Min ascended, they took good care of Shi Shanshan and spared no effort in supporting her. With the support of the Island Master in the mortal world, no one dared to have any opinions on Shi Shanshan. In addition, the power of Shi Shanshan's sword Qi was too strong. Even the Earth Immortal Masters might not be able to take a full blow from Shi Shanshan. Shi Shanshan's status in the Green Jade Immortal Island was relatively aloof. In the spiritual realm, the status of Shi Shanshan seemed to be the opposite of that of Sun Qingxue. This was also good. At least the 2 women could taste another different kind of environment in the sect. For cultivation, this was the tempering of the state of mind. There were only advantages and no disadvantages. If they were in an environment for a long time, it would be a bit unsightly. It was estimated that it was based on this consideration that the big sect would condone the healthy competition between their disciples within the sect. Sun Qingshua's previous experience was not a case, and the treatment of Shi Shanshan was also natural. The Lord of Tantai and eldermen in the mortal world did not take care of Shi Shanshan for a while, and she was pinched by Yangchun. The lesson was very clear, and she would never do it again in the spiritual realm. The Green Jade Immortal Island's affairs were very smooth. There was no trouble in paying the protection fee, and participating in the auction was also very smooth. Of course, Yangchun did not favor one over the other. In the Green Jade Immortal Island, he also took out a longevity pill to auction, and it was still in exchange for fire seeds. After consolidating Shi Shanshan's spiritual awareness cultivation base, Yangchun immediately turned to the Qingquan sect and the Five Elements sect. With the previous cooperation between the two major sects, Yangchun was in a mess in the Qingquan sect and the Five Elements sect. Except for staying longer in the Five Elements sect, because the Murong sisters were 5 people, Yangchun basically treated everyone equally. Yangchun participated in the auctions of the sect, auctioning longevity pills in exchange for fire seeds. At the same time, Yangchun did not forget his original purpose, to find a magic weapon that had always been used as a warm-up auction item. It was just that maybe the time had not come yet. Yangchun had not found what he was looking for. Speaking of which, the last protection fee was only paid by the Profound Heaven sect. The news must have been passed from the 4 major sects to the ears of the Profound Heaven sect. Now it depended on the attitude of the Profound Heaven sect. Would they temporarily let go of the hatred of Yangchun, killing their own disciple, or would they desperately kill Yangchun? When Yangchun left the Five Elements sect, he left with the shock and reluctance of the Murong sisters. The Murong sisters didn't know how big the problem was with Yangchun's spiritual awareness. They only knew that their sister's spiritual awareness cultivation base was directly raised by Yangchun to the 8th grade of the Earth Immortal Realm. This realm of spiritual awareness, even their master had not reached it. This had extraordinary significance for them to quickly establish a foothold in the sect and achieve further development. Everyone understood the importance of spiritual awareness. Such a strong spiritual awareness could allow them to get far faster cultivation than other disciples. Yangchun's spiritual awareness cultivation base really scared the Murong sisters this time, and it also made them thoroughly understand that their husband could become a 5th-grade alchemist not only because of his talent, but also because of his strong spiritual awareness cultivation base. Chapter 1587. It had to be said that the appearance of the prolonging life pill was too timely. It had appeared just before Yangchun ascended, and it was monopolized by Yangchun alone. In the spiritual realm, no matter which big sect it was, there would always be old monsters who were at the end of their lifespans but still couldn't break through. These people had very high seniority, and their cultivation levels were not low either. They had great influence in the sect. As long as these people existed, there would be a market for Yangchun, and there would be people who would put in a good word for Yangchun. The dead disciples are already dead, but the living must continue to live. Within the Mysterious Heaven sect, the higher-ups had discussed the prolonging life pill. Someone directly expressed his opinion. It's just 1,000 years, so let's let him live for 1,000 more years. Within 1,000 years, we can find a way to get all the prolonging life pills in his hands. Once that time is up, won't we have a final say in killing him? The decision-makers were still hesitant, but in the end, they changed their original intentions because of one sentence and collectively agreed to this suggestion. We might be able to guarantee that we won't die a violent death. The sentence that made everyone change their minds was this: but who can guarantee that we won't die of old age? It was this sentence that made the higher-ups of the Mysterious Heaven sect in the spiritual realm make a decision. When it came to one's own future, one's path was already determined. Whether it was among mortals or cultivators, the result was the same. The Mysterious Heaven sect didn't make a clear statement, so Yangchun wouldn't foolishly charge into the Mysterious Heaven sect and seek death with the reputation of killing their disciple. Thus, after leaving the Five Elements sect, Yang Chun began to wander around several famous markets and participate in various auctions in an attempt to find the magic treasure that hid a big secret. However, it seemed that the resolution of the profound heaven sect's high level had not been fully conveyed to the ears of all the disciples. There were several disciples of the profound heaven sect who had a good relationship with Zhu Yixian, who blocked Yang Chun in a certain market. To be exact, they weren't at the market, but on the way to the market. Not far from the market square, there would be a large-scale auction in 3 days. Yang Chen's goal was to participate in the auction to try his luck. 4 Earth Immortal experts stopped Yang Chen. They had been keeping an eye on Yang Chun for some time and discovered that Yang Chun had a habit of attending auctions regularly. So they set up an ambush and waited for Yang Chun. Yang Chun acted as though he did not notice them as he plunged into the encirclement of the 4 earthly immortals. Hand over your life. The mysterious heaven sect disciple facing Yang Chun was an elder of Zhu Yixian's teacher's faction in the enforcement hall. When he saw Yang Chen's figure, his eyes widened and he let out a roar as his life-flying sword chopped down. Evil creature, how dare you? Surrender now. To everyone's surprise, Yang Chun shouted something confusing at this moment. Then, without caring about the other party's reaction, he turned around and fled. Except for that inexplicable sentence, Yang Chen's reaction seemed to be normal. A human immortal junior was surrounded by 4 Earth Immortal experts. Did he want to fight with his life on the line instead of escaping? As long as he was not a fool, he would not do such a stupid thing. Unfortunately, the 4 of them were already prepared. They had been waiting here to plot against Yang Chun for a long time, so they were fully prepared. An Earth Immortal expert on the side waved his hand, and an array disc appeared in his hand. His spiritual power was instantly stimulated, and a magic array with a radius of at least 100 miles on the ground was immediately activated. Boom! A torrential spiritual power instantly rushed up Yang Chen's body, and then the magic array instantly turned into a binding magic array. No matter how Yang Chun drove the flying shuttle, the shuttle seemed to have fallen into a thick transparent liquid and moved abnormally slowly. Yang Chun made a prompt decision and immediately kept the flying shuttle. Then he wanted to escape by burrowing into the ground. Unexpectedly, this magic array had already bound this space. His burrowing technique, which had worked hundreds of times in the past, actually failed at this moment. The speed of the 4 Earth Immortal experts was not affected by the magic array at all, but they did not chase too closely. Instead, they slowly surrounded Yang Chun from 4 directions. This time, the 4 of them were determined to kill Yang Chun and avenge Zhu Yixian. Of course, the things in Yang Chen's Chinquan bag were naturally the spoils of the 4 of them. No one would provoke Yang Chun, who was protected by the 4 major sect for no reason, but the 4 of them used the name of avenging Zhu Yixian, so others could not say anything. Even if the people of the 4 major sect were in front of them, they could not say that it was wrong for them to avenge their companion. This was the only reason that could be used to deal with Yang Chun. Yang Chun simply stood where he was and no longer ran away. He quietly stared at the 4 guys who were slowly approaching. Finally, he shook his head and said something that made the 4 confused again. It's not you guys. The 4 of them listened to Yang Chen's words and were like a monk scratching his head. They did not know what Yang Chen meant, but this was a small matter. Yang Chun might be scared by the pressure of life and death that he was talking nonsense, so it was not a concern. One of them even had the mentality of a cat playing with a mouse and asked jokingly, Yang Chun, didn't you claim to say every injustice has a perpetrator and every debt has a debtor before killing? Why are you mute now? Every injustice has a perpetrator and every debt has a debtor. Yang Chun stared at the person who spoke and suddenly said with a cold smile, if someone wants to die, then don't blame me for killing. As he said this, he waved his hand and a cloud of black smoke suddenly exploded, completely covering Yang Chen's figure in the smoke, and no trace of him could be seen. A cornered beast is still fighting kill. The Earth Immortal expert at the front snorted coldly. His natal flying sword had already cut through the smoke and slashed towards the position where Yang Chun was just a moment ago. The other three did not hesitate either. They had cooperated for many years and acted almost at the same time. Their natal magic weapons were instantly launched and sealed several directions in front and behind where Yang Chun was. No matter which direction Yang Chun fled to, he could not escape from their coordinated attack. However, what was surprising was that Yang Chun's figure seemed to have disappeared in the black smoke in an instant. Even with the cultivation of their divine sense, they could not locate Yang Chun's position. However, this was not the point. Yang Chun was not a person who would wait for death without a fight. As long as they could be sure that Yang Chun could not escape from this binding formation, it would be fine. The more trouble Yang Chun was making now, the more excited he was, the more it was just a deathbed struggle. Swoosh, a large net appeared out of thin air from the outside to the inside, covering the area that was shrouded in the smoke. This was an immortal trapping net that was refined by a peak Earth immortal expert. Even if Yang Chun had great ability, he could not escape. The four complacent experts did not notice that not only could they not detect Yang Chun's whereabouts, but even their magic weapons seemed to have a trace of abnormality. Chapter 1588. Hiss, 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 a creepy sound sounded in the black smoke, and then everyone noticed that their own life source magic weapons seemed to have an indescribable sense of jerkiness. That feeling was as if their own magic weapons were melting. What was going on? Everyone was shocked, and they all recalled their life source magic weapons. When they could clearly see their magic treasures, the four of them sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. In a short period of time, there was a thick layer of black gas on top of the four of them's life source magic weapons. They didn't know what was attached, but their minds were connected to their life source magic weapons, and they could feel that this black gas was corroding their life source magic weapons. The time was very short, so the effect of corrosion was not very obvious, but it still shocked the four of them. What kind of vicious smoke could even corrode magic weapons like this? It must be known that their life source magic weapons had been re-refined by a master of refining in the spiritual world, and they had sacrificially refined their magic weapons for thousands of years, or even longer. How could it be corroded by a junior who had just ascended for less than 10 years? Could there be such a powerful poisonous or corrosive magic weapon in the mortal world? How is this possible? Was it an amulet given to Yang Chun by the people of the four major sects? But such a violent corrosion, at first glance, it was not a righteous path, but a heretical path. Could it be that this Yang Chun also colluded with the demon sects? In any case, Yang Chun would die today. Even if there was any poison protecting his body, it would be useless. At worst, they would lose a few more magic weapons. As long as Yang Chun could not escape this binding array, as long as Yang Chun died, the medicinal pills on him will be enough to compensate for the loss of a few magic weapons. Thinking of this, none of the four people flinched. They just recalled their life source magic weapons and began to use other magic weapons to attack. The master controlling the array disc had already discovered through the array disc that Yang Chun was still standing in the same place without moving, but there was a layer of black smoke protecting him. Everyone could not see it with their naked eyes, and their spiritual awareness could not detect it. It seemed that the binding array disc had played its greatest role. Today, Yang Chun would not be able to escape even if he had wings. This was simple. He just had to smash the place with his magic treasure. The sound of something tearing through the air at high speed rang out. Everyone was on high alert, and they immediately discovered some clues. A jade bottle cut through the black fog and smashed towards the expert controlling the formation plate. Above the bottle, there was neither spiritual power nor any other vision. It was as if it was thrown casually. Everyone could clearly see that this purified bottle was the one that Yang Chun had been playing with in his hand. Perhaps he was anxious and threw it out to distract everyone. In the face of the purified bottle, the earthly immortal controlling the array disc casually used his natal magic treasure to block it. For Yang Chun to hold it in his hand all the time, even if it was not an earth-shattering magic treasure, it was at least a piece of good jade. This time, he went forward, not to split open the purified bottle, but to collect the purified bottle first. It was a little interest for his hard work for so long. Ding! The magic treasure and the purified bottle collided, emitting an incomparably crisp sound. Along with the sound of the collision, there was a surprised voice of the expert. He had no idea that his natal magic treasure did not stop the purified bottle, but was knocked away by the purified bottle, and the purified bottle was still smashing towards him. Careless. The expert's heart trembled. He still looked down on this junior. His own natal magic treasure actually did not stop the purified bottle. However, this was not a big deal. It was just a small purified bottle. Could it be that there was any great harm? Thinking of this, the expert directly reached out his hand and was about to catch the purified bottle in his hand. This time, he did not dare to be as careless as before and used all his strength. As long as the purified bottle touched his hand, it would definitely be caught, and there would be no other possibility. Bang! The expert's hand grabbed the purified bottle, making a slight sound. The expert, who thought that he had succeeded in his trick, suddenly felt a strong and unparalleled force coming from his hand. His hand could not hold the purified bottle anymore, and the purified bottle smashed heavily on his chest. Crack! The sound of bones breaking directly reached the ears of the three people around him. Then they saw a heart-wrenching scene. The expert, who was controlling the array disc, did not catch the purified bottle and was smashed on his chest by the purified bottle. His whole body seemed to be hit by a giant hammer, and suddenly he was sent flying by the purified bottle. While he was still in the air, there was a series of sounds of bones breaking, and then he fell heavily from the air to the ground. Unfortunately, when the purified bottle fell to the ground, it happened to press on the expert's chest. Then, that companion didn't even have time to scream before his entire upper body was turned into a flat meat patty. How is this possible? What kind of violent power could crush an Earth immortal expert into a meat patty? The other three people thought that their cultivation was comparable to their companion, but even if the three of them attacked together, they would not be able to make their companions so miserable. That small purified bottle actually had such a terrifying power. While they were in shock, the attention of the three people had been completely attracted to the tragic death of their companion. No one noticed that a blood-red rattan had appeared silently under the feet of another expert. The rattan suddenly burst out, like a poisonous snake choosing a person to devour, and directly rolled the expert into a ball. The speed was so fast that the expert did not have time to avoid it. In fact, he had already made a dodging movement. Unfortunately, his mouth and nose suddenly smelled a sweet smell. He wanted to quickly leave, but he found that his body seemed to no longer listen to his commands. He could only watch helplessly as the vines wrapped around him. On the rattan, countless sharp thorns instantly pierced into the body of the expert. The blood of the Earth immortal expert, at this moment, seemed to be sucked by countless vampires, and in the blink of an eye, his blood vessels were empty. Then, the blood-red rattan that had absorbed the blood of the Earth immortal seemed to have suddenly taken a stimulant. The top of the rattan suddenly burst into a big blood-red flower. The petals were like a giant mouth swallowing the expert. Blood demon rattan. The experts of the Shintian sect were all experienced and knowledgeable people. How could they not recognize such an obvious feature of the blood-red rattan? Suddenly, they were shocked. A blood demon rattan, which had swallowed the blood essence of the Earth immortal and was close to maturity, could be understood without thinking. Run! At this time, they could no longer care about killing Yangchun. They all shouted at each other, turned around, and ran away. Anyway, with the blood demon rattan, not to mention the human immortal Yangchun, even if they were at the Earth immortal level, if they were a little slower, there would be no survivors here. If they didn't escape now, when would they? Chapter 1589. Unfortunately, it was a little too late to escape at this time. When Yangchun smashed the master who controlled the formation plate, he could already rely on his abnormal spiritual awareness and his knowledge of formations, which was far more advanced than that of the spiritual world, to secretly modify this binding formation. If there was still someone controlling the formation plate, this process would not be so easy, but now no one had the time to do this, which naturally benefited Yangchun. Yangchun did not modify much, just reversed the role of the formation. Originally, it was only to bind Yangchun and would not target the 4 people with the 4 Jade tokens, but now it released Yangchun and changed to target the Masters with the Jade tokens. The 2 Earth Immortal Masters, who were planning to escape frantically, suddenly found that their bodies began to show signs of being out of control. The original high speed of flying on the sword suddenly became like an old bull. The 2 people, who had just seen Yangchun perform this scene not long ago, naturally knew what was going on. The binding formation actually backfired. The 2 of them did not believe that Yangchun could modify the formation in the formation. They just simply thought that the fierce collision of Yangchun's purified bottle just happened to make some changes in the formation plate, so such a strange change occurred. Strictly speaking, it was just a coincidence. But this coincidental change, at this time, was simply killing them. 2 of their companions had been killed, but they were trapped in the binding formation arranged by their companions. They watched the blood-red Rot-Tan slowly crawling like a poisonous snake and crawling towards them. Now the 2 of them really experienced the despair of having no way to go to heaven and no door to the earth. When they used this binding formation to deal with the enemy before, it was simply handy, but when the feeling really came to them, they found it uncomfortable. There's a saying that do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself, but now they had no chance to regret it. After a while, the 2 finally found the source of the blood demon vine. To the surprise of the 2, the blood-red Rot-Tan turned out to be from the purified bottle. Near the mouth of the purified bottle, in the blood-red Rot-Tan, there was also a trace of green. Was this the blood demon vine? At this juncture, there was no more energy to distinguish whether it was the blood demon vine or something else. The huge flower at the top of the blood-colored demon vine was not lying. The companion inside was silent. The 2 could only hear a strange gurgling sound like drinking water, but the flower began to slowly deflate. Such a weird situation was by no means a good thing. Both of them were frightened at the moment, using both hands and feet and using the posture of crawling. The terrifying huge flower was now slowly opening its petals not far from them. It was a proper scene of an ancient beast opening its mouth to devour delicious food. What was even more terrifying was that Yangchun's figure had slowly emerged from the black mist. His feet were not far from the blood demon vine, and even when he walked forward, he accidentally stepped on the leaves of the blood demon vine. However, the fierce blood demon vine did not seem to feel the existence of Yangchun at all. It just rushed the blood-colored flowers to the 2 people. It seemed that the next moment, it would open its mouth to choose people to eat. Go to hell. The horrified expressions of the 2 people lasted for a long time, and they waited until Yangchun was almost 3 feet away from them before they stopped. Almost at the same time, the 2 people's bodies exploded and flew over to Yangchun. The 2 life source magic weapons had also shown their sharp claws. Before, Yangchun was hiding in the black mist, and they couldn't see his figure, and their spiritual awareness couldn't detect him. There would be mistakes in their attacks, and the black mist was strange and could corrode magic weapons. Now that Yangchun had taken the initiative to show his figure, then don't blame the 2 of them for being ruthless. To be honest, they have been unhindered in the spiritual world for so many years. Although they relied on the name of the mysterious heaven sect, they had also experienced a few real killings. They would never panic because of the terrifying changes of the blood demon vine. Everything was to lure the snake out of the hole, to let Yangchun see the vulnerable side of the 2 of them, and then take the initiative to show his figure. Sure enough, the experience of a mere human immortal junior was still not rich enough. He was so easily fooled and stood less than 3 feet away from the 2 of them. In a laughter of the 2 people, the 2 life source flying swords had already cut Yangchun's body. One stood at the neck, and the other stabbed straight into the heart. As long as Yangchun died, everything could be saved. In a flash, the blood demon vine's big blood-colored flower suddenly rushed towards an expert and swallowed the earth immortal expert. The poison on the blood demon vine instantly subdued the earth immortal expert, paralyzing his whole body, and he could only watch himself being swallowed by the blood-colored flower. When the blood-red petals were about to close the last one, The expert, who was about to be swallowed, saw a shadow of a golden bell suddenly appear beside Yang Chun, and 4 dragon shadows flew up and down. The 2 flying swords of himself and his companion hit the shadow of the bell directly, making 2 dull bell sounds. Buzz, buzz. In the shock of the bell sound, the expert, who had been swallowed by the blood demon, Vine, finally lost his last trace of himself and was completely swallowed by the blood demon Vine. The flower tightly wrapped around his body and once again began to let out that kind of gurgling sound of swallowing. Only the guy who was facing Yang Chun at the beginning was left. Now he looked at himself and his companion as if he had seen a ghost. His life source flying sword was blocked by the golden bell shadow on Yang Chun's body, and not even a hair was hurt. The attack just now was almost the biggest attack he could break out under the binding formation, but it was easily blocked. After seeing this scene, the last bit of luck disappeared, and he no longer had the spirit to fight desperately. As soon as the man's momentum was lost, he no longer had any spirit, and his whole person was dispirited. At this time, the blood demon Vine took the opportunity to wrap around his body, and the sharp thorns on the vine instantly pierced his body, but they did not immediately suck up all the blood in his body. Instead, like a python, they firmly bound him and dragged him in front of Yang Chun. "I'm very interested in the Xintian Gate." Yang Chun lowered his head, looked at the Earth Immortal expert who had been completely controlled, and said with a smile, "If you can satisfy my curiosity, maybe I don't have to say every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor." The Earth Immortal expert, who had been completely controlled by the blood demon Vine and no longer had the ability to resist, relaxed after hearing this. As long as Yang Chun still wanted to know something from his mouth, he would be safe for the time being. However, before he could think about how to deal with Yang Chun's inquiry, Yang Chun suddenly penetrated his sea of consciousness. "Look at me." Chapter 1590. With Yang Chun's current cultivation base, it was not enough to be like the great principal golden immortal. He could dig out a part of his memory from a seed of spiritual awareness. After entering the sea of consciousness, he could dig out a complete memory. However, it was not too difficult to hypnotize a guy who was scared to death and had just escaped from death. In the face of Yang Chun's questions, this guy answered almost every question. Yang Chun wanted to know a lot of things, but the other party was an Earth Immortal master. In terms of real spiritual sense cultivation, he was only one realm lower than Yang Chun. The hypnosis time would not be too long, so he could only pick the most important questions to ask first. "Have you seen such a magic weapon at the auction?" The first thing Yang Chun asked was the ancient zither he had been searching for. The characteristics of this zither were very distinct. At first glance, he could tell that it was a high-grade product. There should be a lot of people paying attention to it. Then Yang Chun described the characteristics of the ancient zither. Yang Chun had already asked many people in the 4 great sects and several markets, but there was no news at all. Yang Chun wondered if the zither had not been born yet. After listening to Yang Chun's description, the Earth Immortal Master's face showed a trace of reminiscence. After a while, he said, "I have seen a similar zither, but I don't know if you were the one who said it." As soon as the other party spoke, Yang Chun was overjoyed. He didn't expect to find a clue from this guy after searching for such a long time. He immediately asked for more details. Speaking of which, it was no wonder that Yang Chun could not find it. This ancient zither actually appeared in the mysterious Heaven Sects auction house a few decades ago. The maker of the ancient zither could not be found, but the tone was very good and the materials used to make it were exquisite. At first glance, it was a high-quality ancient zither. There was no way to find out where the ancient zither came from. At the auction, someone bought the zither on the spot and said that he wanted to give it to someone. "Who do you want to give it to? Who has the zither now?" Yang Chun immediately asked. It was not easy to get a clue, so of course he had to ask in detail. "The zither was bought by our martial uncle Liu. Apparently, he wants to give it to Granny Tianqin in exchange for her playing a song." Speaking of Granny Tianqin, the Earth Immortal expert also revealed a fascinated expression. She should be in Granny Tianqin's hands by now. Even when hypnotized, The earthly immortal experts yearned for Granny Tianqin from the bottom of their hearts. One could imagine just how famous Granny Tianqin was. It was no wonder. Granny Tianqin was known as a zither master. In the spiritual realm, she was almost the most brilliant zither master. It was unknown how many people were willing to go bankrupt just to listen to a wonderful song. Of course, listening to Granny Tianqin's song wasn't without any benefits. Granny Tianqin was proficient in 3 songs: tranquil music, path of slaughter, and cultivation song. Amongst these 3 tunes, the tranquil tune was capable of allowing one to comprehend the heavens and the earth in a tranquil state. The Tao of slaughter was capable of causing one to be filled with lofty sentiments and kill decisively. And as for the cultivation tune, it was capable of healing the hidden injuries within a cultivator's body, causing it to possess boundless miraculous effects. As long as one could calm down and listen to a song, if it wasn't a breakthrough in one's mental state, it could strengthen one's body, heal hidden injuries, or increase one's spirit force and divine sense. Just this alone was enough for countless people to chase after her. Granny Tianqin's zither skills were so high that others couldn't even compare. Even if there were other zither masters who listened to Granny Tianqin's music, they wouldn't be able to imitate it no matter how hard they tried, let alone achieve the same effect. It was impossible for ordinary people to easily see Granny Tianqin. Aside from being interested in zither and music scores, Granny Tianqin had an eccentric personality. It was rare to see her, let alone listen to a song. Presumably, the mysterious heaven sex Marshal Uncle Lu bought this zither in hopes of moving Granny Tianqin and getting what he wanted. If this was really the case, Yang Chun was a bit surprised. If his memories from his previous life were correct, this zither had been lost. It was likely that Granny Tianqin hadn't been interested in it or had misjudged it. She hadn't discovered the secret behind it, so it ended up in the hands of Yang Chen's friend. In Yang Chen's memories from his previous life, Granny Tianqin was a very powerful person. However, at that time, she wasn't called Granny Tianqin, but Fairy Tianqin. People said that Granny Tianqin was ugly, so she always wore a black veil in the spirit realm. She never showed her true face to others, and only 2 very close friends had seen her true face. However, Yang Chun knew that it was when she was in the spiritual world. After arriving in the immortal world, the heavenly zither fairy had another fortuitous encounter and was able to restore her beauty. Since then, she had thrown away the title of grandma and was known as the heavenly zither fairy. She was a fairy who became famous even earlier than Han Mei in Xuewu. Fairy Tianqin's celestial face also appeared in Yang Chen's mind. Even though Yang Chen was used to seeing his wives and concubines, he still felt a sense of amazement. What is Fairy Tianqin's cultivation level like? Yang Chen didn't remember what Fairy Tianqin's cultivation level was. He hadn't interacted with her in his previous life and had only listened to her celestial music from afar. It wasn't even the 3 famous songs, so it was normal for him to not know Fairy Tianqin's current cultivation level. The Earth Immortal expert was still hypnotized and didn't refuse at all. It is said that she is at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm. Since he had a clue, Yang Chen was no longer in a hurry and would slowly explore. Next, Yang Chen began to ask some questions about the mysterious heaven sect. Even if Yang Chen had 10,000 years of memories from his previous life, it was impossible for him to know the secrets of the mysterious heaven sect. The hypnotized Earth Immortal expert answered a lot of questions, including the fact that Yang Lan and Yang Lan were being punished by the mysterious heaven sect's law enforcement hall. Hearing that the 2 of them were suffering, Yang Chen wasn't surprised at all. He just continued to ask a few other questions. After less than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, the Earth Immortal expert clearly reacted. He woke up from Yang Chen's hypnosis and began to struggle. He had revealed the sect's secret. Even if Yang Chen let him go, he would lose a layer of skin if he didn't die when he returned. If he was captured by a Heaven Immortal expert and revealed the secret, then it would be excusable. The sect probably wouldn't pursue it too much. If one's skills weren't as good as others, then it was normal for them to be trampled on. But now, they were 4 Earth Immortal experts. They were killed by Yang Chun, a heaven immortal who had just ascended more than 10 years ago. The sect would never tolerate this. Boy, kill me if you dare. My mysterious heaven sect will not let you go. After realizing his situation, the Earth Immortal expert began to curse. As you wish. Yang Chun gently snapped his fingers, and the spikes of the blood phantom vine began to suck the blood crazily. In the blink of an eye, the Earth Immortal expert turned into a pale and dry corpse that was swallowed by the blood-colored flower. Chapter 1591. The four Earth Immortal Masters of the Profound Heaven sect wanted to deal with Yang Chun on the road, but they were solved by Yang Chun alone. In this battle, Yang Chun used the pure bottle medicine garden, the golden bell, the great yin-yang five elements flying sword, and a Bai's body. When the Chi Min sect was destroyed, a Zhu's body absorbed the blood of the Earth Immortal. However, that was the blood of the corpses, which was far less nutritious than the blood of the living Earth Immortal Masters. After absorbing enough blood of the Earth Immortal, the blood phantom vine was finally close to great success, and a blood-colored flower bloomed. From then on, the blood phantom vine was not only a blood-sucking demon vine, but it could even devour corpses. Abai's strength improved again, which made Abai overjoyed. She had just refined the Dragon Clan gourd, and she immediately encountered such a good thing. However, the weight of the pure bottle medicine garden did come in handy. The binding formation arranged by the other party at the beginning did limit Yang Chen's actions. Fortunately, the pure bottle smashed the guy who controlled the formation plate, so Yang Chun could easily turn the tables. Yang Chun of the Profound Heaven sect would definitely not take the initiative to come to the door. If the Profound Heaven sect was interested, they would definitely take the initiative to contact Yang Chun, and it would not be too late to reach the conditions at that time. In Yang Chen's plan, the Profound Heaven sect in the spiritual world was a huge help, which could make the Chunyang Palace develop rapidly. Of course, it was not the time yet. He still had to wait for the people of the Profound Heaven sect to come to the door. Even if the guy who came to the door had an arrogant attitude, Yang Chun didn't mind killing him first. As for Yang Chun himself, he could consider whether he could visit Granny Tianqin during this time. Speaking of which, it was estimated that no one in the spiritual world knew more about Granny Tianqin than Yang Chun. She was the daughter of a great figure in the heavenly court in the immortal world. In order to protect her, she deliberately made her appearance into an ugly old woman, so she got the title of Granny. Coincidentally, Yang Chun knew how to restore her appearance. However, Granny Tianqin was not an easy person to get close to. The reason why she was called Tianqin was because her father in the immortal world had prepared a transcendent-grade magic treasure, Tian Feng Qin, for her a long time ago. Its power was incomparable, and its sound technique was superb in killing people. Although Yang Chun had the golden bell to protect him, it was useless in front of this invisible and colorless killing sound wave. Countless people had coveted the heavenly phoenix zither, but no one had ever succeeded. Granny Tianqin's reputation for being heartless was not because she had rejected many people, but because she had killed many people. Generally, people without a bit of confidence would not easily approach this unsociable old woman. Yang Chun understood Celestial Zither's current situation. She was originally a beautiful woman who would embarrass the flowers and obstruct the moon, but now she had turned into an ugly old woman. Anyone would feel depressed. Being in this state of mind for a long time and having to endure people's gazes and criticism, Celestial Zither already had a lot of self-control. Speaking of the descendant of a great figure in the heavenly court, besides Celestial Zither, there should be another one in the spiritual realm. He was also the legitimate son of a great figure in the heavenly court. Before the turmoil in the heavenly court, he was forcibly sent to the spiritual realm at a great price in order to escape the coup. If he failed at that time, he would have left behind a descendant for that great figure. Unfortunately, the only consequence of being forcefully sent to the lower realm was paying a huge price. However, his consciousness was not completely sent down. He could only become an idiot in the spirit realm, mingling with the natives and living a muddle-headed life. He had no concept of cultivation at all. This was also something from a memory of Yang Chen's previous life. After coming into contact with various news in the spiritual realm, it was slowly dug out from the depths of his memory. Yang Chen remembered very clearly that until the moment he died, the son of that great figure was not able to ascend. Either he died in the spiritual realm, or he had never been able to ascend. Now that Yang Chen remembered this memory, of course, he couldn't let it go easily. Naturally, he had to find that foolish young master. If possible, Yang Chen could even guide him to cultivate and then ascend to the immortal realm. As long as he could return to the immortal realm, his sanity would be restored and he would become a normal person. At that time, wouldn't it be a great favor to Yang Chen and Chunyang Palace? In a short period of time, Yang Chen decided a lot of things. After cleaning up the battlefield, Yang Chen continued to go to the market. Since he had already come here, it wouldn't take him more than 3 to 5 days to see what was at the auction in the market. The destination was not far. With Yang Chen's speed, he arrived at the place in less than 2 hours. This was a huge cultivator city. It did not belong to any big sect, but a spontaneous trading market. It even provided a place for some rogue cultivators to stay. It was not a rogue cultivator alliance, but it was also a sizable city. The city was not inferior to any big sect, but it was jointly managed by several big businesses. These businesses were large and prosperous. They had a deep background and strong strength. They were not afraid of anyone making trouble when they joined forces. As long as they entered the city, no matter how much hatred there was outside, they couldn't fight. It was similar to the gathering point on the Demon Continent back then. There were many well-behaved businessmen in the city, whether it was a large business or a small business. Even the cultivators of each process had a special place to set up a small stall. Yang Chen's goal was the auction, so after asking the way, he went straight to the auction house. There were still 2 days before the auction, and Yang Chen had to get a qualification to enter. The auction house was run by a big business, Jufu Lu, and its name was Jufu Auction House. This auction was the largest one in half a year. If you wanted to participate in the auction, you must have enough wealth or enough valuable auction items. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to enter the door. The spirit stones in the spiritual world were different from those in the mortal world. The spirit stones formed under the situation of 100 times spiritual pressure contained more spiritual power than the spirit stones in the mortal world. The spirit stones that Yang Chen originally had in the mortal world had already been left in the Chunyang Palace in the mortal world, but he didn't have many spirit stones on him. There was still some stock in the Chinquan bag of the 4 guys who had just been killed not long ago, but it couldn't meet the requirements of the auction. For poor ghosts. Yang Chen muttered in his heart and turned in another direction. That was the place where the auction was entrusted. Every auction house had a similar place for receiving guests. "Sir, please come in." The assistants of the auction house were a group of clever natives. They had the cultivation of the Yuanying stage, and their eyesight and attitude were very good. Seeing Yang Chen coming over, one of the assistants helped Yang Chen lift the curtain and invited him in. After serving tea, he bowed and asked, "What item are you going to sell?" Chapter 1592. The standard of this auction was very high, and the value of the auction items was not low, so if one did not have a considerable wealth, he really could not enter the door of the auction house. Generally speaking, those who participated in this level of auction were at least at the Earth Immortal level. Ordinary human immortal juniors were still in the process of accumulating wealth and were not qualified to enter at all. Of course, some guys with superior background were exceptions. However, those people would also go out with a group of people, so they would not be alone. Not to mention other things, there were people who had to consider the safety of letting a human immortal junior go out alone. There were very few human immortal cultivators like Yang Chen who came alone. Fortunately, the staff of Blessing Gathering House were well trained. No one would look at people with that kind of contemptuous eyes, and they were very attentive. Yang Chen had a lot of things that could be exchanged for the qualification to enter the auction house. Not to mention treasures, such as Prolongation Pill and Perching Divine Jade. It was estimated that a few 10,000 years old elixirs from the second floor of the Pure Bottle Medicine Garden would meet the requirements. When going out, Yang Chun did not want to be too high profile, as long as things were done. I was lucky to get two 10,000 years old ginsengs, and I want to entrust you to take care of them. Yang Chun took out two 10,000 years old ginsengs from the medicine garden and placed them on the table in the reception room. It was said to be 10,000 years old, but in fact, after Yang Chun carried it with him for so many years, and after the integration of the dragon gourd and the pure bottle medicine garden, these two ginsengs, the worst in the second floor of the medicine garden, were also 15 or 16,000 years old. After taking it out, the head, body, hands, and feet were complete, and the ginseng whiskers were complete. It was definitely a fresh top-grade product. I'm going to ask the appraiser. For this kind of thing, the staff did not dare to make decisions on their own and hurriedly went to ask the appraiser. Every auction house had such an appraiser, who always had to ensure that the things received by their auction house would not be fake. After a while, a human immortal cultivator wearing a shopkeeper's costume entered the reception room. Like the staff, he also had a smile on his face and seemed to have a good attitude. When it came to the appraiser, he became a real cultivator, and some magic treasures had to be appraised by the cultivator. Good stuff. Upon seeing the two intact ginsengs, the appraiser nodded his head profusely. The ginsengs are intact and of excellent quality. They are at least 15,000 years old. Good stuff. As he spoke, his gaze shifted from the ginseng to Yang Chun. After seeing the purified bottle in Yang Chun's hand, his eyes suddenly lit up. I wonder if these two ginsengs are enough for me to participate in the auction in 3 days. Yang Chun's goal was very clear. He just wanted to get the qualification to participate in the auction. It didn't matter if he was in the VIP box or not, as long as he achieved his goal. So you want to participate in the auction in 3 days? The appraiser immediately understood Yang Chun's meaning. He turned his head back to the ginseng and stared at it a few more times. Maintaining his professional smile, he shook his head and said, "However, this humble shop has been preparing for this auction for half a year. These two ginseng cannot be put up for auction in 3 days. We can only put them up for auction today or in an ordinary auction 3 days later. Esteemed guest, what do you think?" It seemed like this was a big deal. Even two complete ginsengs of 15,000 years were not qualified to be put up for auction. Yang Chun couldn't help but be interested. It was better to come at the right time than to come early. Who knows, he might be able to find something good in the auction. Then, what kind of items do you think can be put up for auction? The appraiser's reply was very straightforward. Yang Chun also asked very straightforwardly. In any case, the appraiser understood his request and only wanted to participate in the auction. Esteemed guest, please forgive me. This auction must be at least a 3rd-grade magic treasure or a 5th revolution pill. The appraiser didn't beat around the bush and directly answered. Seeing that Yang Chun was still hesitating, the appraiser couldn't help but remind him. For example, the item in your hand is quite good. The reason why Yang Chun hesitated was because there were too many items and he didn't know which one to choose. However, the appraiser misunderstood him and couldn't help but laugh. You have good eyesight. Of course, the herb garden with a pure bottle was a good item. It had 2 artifact spirits that had passed their tribulation and had fused with the gourd of the dragon race. It could hold any kind of liquid, and any of its characteristics would make people fight over it. The appraiser seemed to be only at the peak stage of human immortal realm, but his eyesight was first class. Just from its appearance, he could tell that the herb garden was extraordinary. Unfortunately, this is my beloved item, and I can't take it out. Another jade bottle appeared in Yang Chun's hand. He gently placed it on the table and pushed it toward the appraiser while asking, "Then, appraiser, can you take a look at this bottle of pills?" 5th revolution pill. The appraiser reluctantly retracted his gaze from the bottle in Yang Chun's hand. He picked up the jade bottle and opened its cap. Immediately, he saw 3 pills inside. The 5 obvious dragon patterns on each pill reminded him that these were all 5th revolution pills. When he took a closer look, the appraiser couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and exclaimed, "5th revolution questioning inner heart pill." The appraiser couldn't help but be surprised. The questioning inner heart pill was originally a medicinal pill of the spiritual world. It was refined by Yangchun in the mortal world in advance. Don't look at the endless number of 6th and 7th grade alchemists in the spiritual world, but there were only a handful of people who could refine 6th or 7th revolution pills. Except for those who really wanted to reach the peak of alchemy, they would carry out more difficult refining. Under normal circumstances, they would choose to refine with 3 or 4 revolutions. This was especially true for the questioning inner heart pill. For ordinary human immortal rookies, it was enough to use 1 or 2 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. Only when one reached the level of Earth Immortal would someone use 3 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. For the higher heaven immortals, the best was only 4 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. Only those real alchemy masters would prepare 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill for themselves and their close friends. Originally, the difficulty of refining the questioning inner heart pill was high. Not all 6th grade alchemists could successfully carry out 5 revolutions refining. Just like when Yangchun was in the mortal world, as long as any kind of medicinal pill could be refined by 5 revolutions, he would be a 5th grade alchemist master. Many 6th grade alchemists could refine the simplest qi, nourishing pill, and Pei-Yuan pill. Those who could refine 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill, even in the spiritual world, could be counted on one hand. This was not counting the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill that Yangchun took out. All the pill patterns were clear dragon patterns, which are obviously better than the ordinary kind of pill patterns without anything. After all, it was a medicinal pill refined from the profound spirit furnace. With the addition of the dragon spirit refining, it was said to be a 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill, but the real medicinal effect was already comparable to a 6 revolutions pill. The appraiser was a real person who knew the goods, otherwise he would not become the appraiser of the Blessing Gathering building. Even though he was used to seeing good things, he was shocked by this 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. Chapter 1593. If the women around Yangchun knew that when they were in the mortal world, the 5 grade questioning inner heart pills that could be eaten like jelly beans every time they retreated was so precious even in the spiritual world, they didn't know if they would also lose their composure. However, the women would not be too pretentious. No matter how precious the things were, they were also given by their husband. It was a matter of course to eat what their husband gave them, and there was nothing to make a fuss about. Moreover, with Yangchun, the good things that they had seen were not just the questioning inner heart pills. Of course, only the women around Yangchun and a few people in Chunyang Palace had seen the 5 grade questioning inner heart pills. Other people, including the 4 major sect, Yangchun provided at most the 2nd grade questioning inner heart pills. Shopkeeper, I don't know if these medicinal pills are enough. Yangchun seemed to have expected the other party's reaction. When the shopkeeper stood up and was still constantly using his spiritual awareness to explore the medicinal pills, Yangchun asked slowly, "Enough, enough." The shopkeeper's words were now a bit repetitive. In fact, he was completely sure that this was the 5 grade questioning inner heart pill. Regardless of the color and smell of the medicinal pills, he could judge that it was the questioning inner heart pill. The reason why he was still using his spiritual awareness to explore was just a subconscious reaction to the good things. In the eyes of the master who still couldn't believe it until now, Yangchun got the invitation to enter the auction house 3 days later, and the proof that the auction house had accepted 3 5 grade questioning inner heart pills and walked out of the auction house. There were still 3 days before the auction. Yangchun could take a good look in this place to see if he could buy some things he needed, such as fire seeds, such as some special spirit medicine of the spiritual world, and so on. Since arriving at the Blue Cloud sect, Yangchun did not forget to collect fire seeds. The high-level fire seeds were definitely something that could only be encountered but not sought, but the low-level fire seeds were relatively common. The 1st and 2nd grade fire seeds of the spiritual world, Yangchun has already collected a batch in his hands. He would absorb it with the profound spirit furnace first, and then consider integrating it into the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Fire seeds from the mortal world were no longer obtainable in the spirit realm, and the same was true in the immortal world. In Immortal world, the fire cultivators did not have the ability to integrate many fire seeds. But in the Immortal world, there were no low-level fire seeds that seemed easy, which was why the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire was only a legendary flame. While Yang Chun was leisurely strolling around the market to kill time, the auction house was in an uproar. What? 5 revolutions, questioning inner heart pill. Moreover, he had never seen a dragon-shaped Danvane before, just for the right to participate in the auction. Hearing the report from the appraiser, the host in charge of the auction jumped up. How is that possible? If it was an alchemist who could take out the 5 revolutions, questioning inner heart pill would have enough spirit stones to participate in the auction, right? In the spiritual realm, there was no lack of alchemists among the wealthiest people. If it was not an alchemist, since he could buy the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill, could be that he was still short of spirit stones? So when he heard that the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill was only in exchange for a qualification to participate, the first reaction of the owner was that it was impossible. This old man's eyes have not been wrong. Owner, you look at it first. Knowing that the owner would have this reaction, in fact, the appraiser himself was a little incredulous. He reached out and handed over the jade bottle containing the medicinal pill. He smiled bitterly. In fact, this old man couldn't believe it first, but this thing is really right. The owner grabbed the jade bottle and couldn't wait to open it. He poured one out and placed it in the palm of his hand and observed it carefully. To be able to run such a large industry, although the owner was not as professional as the appraiser, his vision was not bad. After such a close observation, he finally confirmed that what was in the jade bottle in front of him was really the crazy 5th-grade questioning inner heart pill. It's actually true. The owner and the appraiser looked at each other and didn't know how to describe their feelings at the moment. After a while, the owner asked, "Who brought it to the auction?" "A 3rd-grade human immortal junior." The appraiser's eyes were sharp. He could even clearly see Yang Chen's cultivation base. The owner's mind turned and began to consider which young masters of big families would match this cultivation base. But how could he think of so many in such a short time? "Owner, this old man has another discovery." Seeing that the owner began to ponder, the appraiser also knew that the owner had a habit of pondering. After waiting for a while, he interrupted and said, "That young man probably has the rejuvenation bottle that owner has been looking for." Schwa. The owner's eyes quickly swept from a distance to the appraiser's face. With a pleasantly surprised expression, the owner quickly asked, "Are you sure?" "I'm not completely sure." The appraiser hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he did not dare to give a definite answer. "But that young man has been playing with a jade bottle in his hand." This old man's eyes have seen many magic weapons, but there are not many magic weapons that can exude such a degree of vitality in a restrained situation. The implication was that the appraiser was 80% sure that the jade bottle in Yang Chen's hand should be the rejuvenation bottle that his owner had been looking for. As the appraiser of Blessing Gathering Pavilion, he should have this kind of insight. If Yang Chen was next to him, he would definitely laugh. The pure bottle was a medicine garden that bred all kinds of rare medicinal materials. In addition, he had used the heaven and earth treasure raising secret art to refine it for thousands of years, and also integrated with the Dragon Clan's gourd. He even enhanced the bodies of a Zhu and a Bai. Not to mention the other things, just the immortal peach that a Zhu absorbed. The vitality inside was enough to make people crazy. If he judged that the pure bottle was the rejuvenation bottle, based on this alone, Yang Chun would definitely shake his head. But it could not be denied that with such a dramatic change in the pure bottle medicine garden, it might really be able to bring some dead trees back to life. Then does he have any plans to make a move? The owner's breathing began to quicken as he hurriedly asked. No. The appraiser shook his head. This old man did ask indirectly, but he said that it was his beloved item and that he would not make a move. After saying that, he did not wait for the owner to ask and carefully and clearly told the story of his meeting with Yang Chun. Then is it possible that he is coming for us? The owner frowned and began to doubt. Could it be that he heard that we wanted to buy the rejuvenation bottle, so he deliberately played with it in front of you? Such a magic weapon. If it were you, would you casually play with it? If it were me, I definitely wouldn't. The appraiser also hesitated and could not make a decision. Then let's wait and see. The owner also made a decision. Let's see what he wants to do at the auction. Chapter 1594. Yang Chun, who was strolling around, did not expect that a bottle of 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill that he took out had caused waves inside the auction house, and the other party even began to have ideas about the bottle in his hand. Speaking of it, Yang Chun really took it out casually at that time. After so many years, Yang Chun had long forgotten what was appropriate to take out. The other party reminded Yang Chun that the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill was fine, so Yang Chun just took out a bottle of 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. There were many people in the spiritual world who could refine the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill, so this should not be a dazzling thing. It would not be so precious. Maybe it could be exchanged for a lot of spirit stones, but it would not become a treasure that people would fight for. There were also other 5 revolutions medicinal pills, and there were many Lingji mushroom jade pill, but wasn't that something that was not rare in the mortal world? Yang Chun wanted to qualify for this auction, so he didn't think much about it. Otherwise, any random life-prolonging pill would allow him to enjoy VIP treatment. As for the bottle, Yang Chun was even more wronged. Since discovering that the bottle could hold a whole ocean, Yang Chun had been using the bottle as a dumbbell to temper his yellow turban strongman body refining technique. How is it just to show off to the other party? This misunderstanding might not be eliminated for a long time. Yang Chun didn't even know that he had caused the misunderstanding of others. He acted as if nothing had happened. He wandered around, and if he saw something he liked, he would go up and bargain. It was also a rare enjoyment of stealing half a day of leisure. In the blink of an eye, 3 days slipped away unconsciously, and the auction that Blessing Gathering House had prepared for half a year finally began. Early in the morning, people who came from all sides to participate in the auction began to enter one after another. Yang Chun was not particularly in a hurry. He slowly strolled to the entrance of the auction venue. It was not too early nor too late. When he went in, there were already hundreds of people, and there were still people coming one after another. It was worthy of being an old firm. Even in the auction hall, the hospitality of the guests was very thoughtful. Everyone had a table beside them, which was full of tea and wine, and the guests were free to help themselves. Although the table was not big, the wood was made of 1,000-year-old red sandalwood. It was truly luxurious. This was only in the hall. It was said that the private rooms were even more eye-opening. However, those who could enter the private rooms were all VIPs. If they didn't spend a lot of money, then they were high and mighty figures. They disdained to squeeze into the hall with ordinary cultivators. These people were received by special people, and no one would know their identity when they entered or left the room. Now that he knew that the zither he was looking for was in the hands of the mysterious heaven sect and was going to be given to Granny Tianqin, Yang Chun didn't deliberately look for it. He had only come to the auction in case he missed it. He really didn't plan on buying anything. Perhaps Yang Chun would only make a move if an advanced fire seed appeared. If people knew that Yang Chun just took out 3 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pills just for a few glances, it would definitely make people scold him for being a wastrel. How could such a medicinal pill that was extremely beneficial to the cultivation of a heavenly immortal be wasted like this? Soon, the auction began. At the beginning, there were a few warm-up items as usual. The standards of this auction were very high. Even the warm-up items could be regarded as the final treasures in an ordinary auction. To Yang Chun's surprise, there was actually a 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill that was used as a warm-up item and was the third to appear. 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. As soon as the auctioneer announced the name, it caused a commotion below. That was a 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill. A medicinal pill might be able to help an earth immortal expert or even a heavenly immortal expert break through their bottleneck. How could such a heaven-defying thing appear? 100 gene of middle-grade spirit stones. Someone immediately called out a price. 100 gene of middle-grade spirit stones in the spiritual world was already equivalent to 100 gene of top-grade spirit stones in a mortal world. The value had increased by 10,000 times. 120 gene, 125 gene, 140 gene. There was almost no interval between the series of bids. After a while, the starting price of a 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill, which was only 50 gene of middle-grade spirit stones, had been raised to 200 gene of middle-grade spirit stones, and it was still rising. The qualification to participate in the auction was at least 200 gene of middle-grade spirit stones, or 2 gene of top-grade spirit stones. This medicinal pill alone had now exceeded this value. The auction house was really good at doing business. First, they took out a 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill to warm up the crowd. When the official auction came, they took out 2 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pills at once. With the foreshadowing in front, the price would definitely not be low. In addition, even the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill could only be a warm-up item. It seemed to be a ways to warm up the crowd, but it had imperceptibly raised the level of the entire auction, and the overall price had gone up. It was a very good business. In the end, this 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill was bought by a distinguished guest in the box at the price of 3.5 gene of top-grade spirit stones. Only then did the battle for this questioning inner heart pill end. This was not the end. After winning the questioning inner heart pill, perhaps he was too happy in his heart, or perhaps he knew that with the questioning inner heart pill, he would definitely be able to comprehend something. The guest who bought the questioning inner heart pill actually broke through on the spot. It was not known how long this bottleneck had been stuck for this distinguished guest at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm. Anyway, after the auctioneer dropped the hammer and announced that the questioning inner heart pill belonged to this distinguished guest, the long-lost confidence appeared in him. This moment of epiphany let him immediately break through his own bottleneck. The tribulation clouds in the sky began to condense immediately. This kind of thing had never happened in the auction house. The surrounding guests were also panicking. If they were involved in the scope of the tribulation, it would really be an unexpected disaster. No one wanted such a disaster to happen. Fortunately, the distinguished guest also understood that his breakthrough was not a good place. After apologizing, he didn't even take the questioning inner heart pill. He quickly left and rushed to the distant tribulation. At this time, the auction could not go on. People began to wonder if this distinguished guest at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm would succeed in crossing the tribulation. The Earth Immortal tribulation was not something that everyone could easily see. With such an opportunity, the auction house itself would not let go of such a good opportunity for publicity. Under the expectation of everyone, the guest at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm had crossed 99 Earth Immortal tribulations in one breath and successfully entered the Fairy Immortal realm. Everything happened under the eyes of everyone in the auction house, and there was no way to fake it. After the success of the tribulation, the newly promoted Fairy Immortal Master did not forget that he still had a questioning inner heart pill in the hands of the Blessing Gathering Pavilion. He rushed back to the box of the auction house again and continued to participate in the auction. Although it was delayed for almost half a day, no one had any opinions about this. The rare Earth Immortal Tribulation ceremony was definitely an unexpected surprise for the people present. Chapter 1595. Even Yang Chun didn't expect that a mere 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill could give a master at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm such a huge benefit. Of course, the premise of all this was that the master at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm had accumulated enough, and he was only one step away. The 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill gave him a lot of confidence, and he succeeded in crossing the tribulation in one fell swoop. Everyone understood the reason, but when they really encountered this kind of thing, few people could remain calm. The psychological price of the 5 revolutions dragon mark questioning inner heart pill in people's hearts was quickly raised to a jaw-dropping level. The Blessing Gathering building seized the opportunity and immediately announced that there were 2 similar 5 revolutions dragon mark questioning inner heart pill being auctioned during the official auction process. This news immediately caused another frenzy. There were actually 2 of such medicinal pills. It was simply an unexpected surprise. For a moment, countless people began to calculate in their hearts what kind of price they would have to pay if they wanted to obtain one of the pills. Even more people began to ponder just what kind of person would bring out such a treasure that could only be found by chance to auction it, and how they would be able to find the owner of the pill. At least half of the people gave up their original goal and changed to bidding for the 5 revolutions, questioning inner heart pill. Whether this thing was used by oneself or used as a gift to others, it was of great benefit to oneself. In contrast, the 1 or 2 magic weapons or others that were originally determined seemed insignificant. Yang Chun was also dumbfounded as he watched people go crazy and made a new division of the value of the 5 revolutions, questioning inner heart pill in his heart. If this was originally a relatively ordinary thing in the spiritual world, now it had been promoted to a good thing that could be extorted a lot of benefits like in the mortal world. Behind the auction house, the owner of the Blessing Gathering building was dumbfounded as if he had seen a ghost. Sitting next to him was the appraiser who identified the 5 revolutions, questioning inner heart pill, and he also had an incredible expression. Who would have thought that a 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill that was used to warm up and stimulate the auction to upgrade the grade could have such a ridiculous thing happen? It abruptly let a master who was stuck at the peak of the earth immortal realm successfully break through, cross the tribulation on the spot, and then after becoming a fairy immortal, he leisurely returned to participate in the auction. This kind of thing that could not be encountered even once in 8 lifetimes. How could it happen in the Blessing Gathering building? However, after the initial shock, the owner of the Blessing Gathering pavilion could not conceal his ecstasy. It had already happened, and it happened in front of everyone's eyes. This was simply a super big pie that God had specially given to Blessing Gathering Tower, the kind that fell directly into their mouths. If he didn't seize this opportunity, he would be letting down the heaven's grace. Send a message to the auctioneer in front immediately. Tell him to increase the base price of all the auction items by 20%, the owner instructed immediately. With such a good opportunity, the auction house should at least earn a few percent more profit, right? Has the young man who sent the questioning inner heart pill come? Immediately afterward, the owner's second sentence was to ask the master next to him. The reason why he brought along the appraiser was to make sure that Yang Chan was the real person, so that he could make targeted arrangements. Here it is. This is it. The auctioneer manipulated a water screen in front of the 2 of them, which clearly displayed the situation inside the auction hall. At this moment, Yang Chen's face appeared on the water screen. It was exceptionally clear. Yang Chen was also surprised. He didn't seem to expect this kind of thing to happen. It seemed that Yang Chen didn't seem to be pretentious. Then, the owner's eyes focused on Yang Chen's hand displayed on the water screen. A verdant jade bottle was in Yang Chen's hand. Yang Chen was like playing with a delicate object, constantly rubbing and playing with it, changing hands from time to time, but never putting it down for a moment. The water screen couldn't feel any aura on the jade bottle. The owner subconsciously asked, "Is it this bottle?" "Yes, it's this one." The auctioneer nodded quickly. After listening, the owner's eyes were focused on the jade bottle, but he didn't say anything. The following auction seemed to be a lot more heated. Just as the arrangement of Blessing Gathering Pavilion at the beginning, even the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill was an auction item to warm up the crowd, and the following items were even better. The base price was also very surprising. It was at least 20% higher than the price in everyone's mind. Yang Chun made a move and bought a 3rd-grade fire seed at a good price. The 3rd-grade fire seed was not very precious, but this kind of earth core spiritual fire was the upgraded version of Yang Chen's earth core fire in the spiritual world. It was not easy to find, but Yang Chun easily picked it up. As the auction items appeared one by one, the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill once again appeared in everyone's sight. It was originally decided to auction 2 together, but now it was temporarily separated and auctioned separately. With the previous episode of the Peak Earth Immortal Master, the 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill was unprecedentedly sought after. The degree of enthusiasm was so high that even Yang Chun felt regret that taking out 3 was a bit too much. 4 caddies of upper grade spirit stones, 5 caddies, 5.5 caddies, 6 caddies. The base price was quoted at 3 caddies of upper-grade spirit stones, and then in less than 10 breaths, it became 6 caddies. The final transaction price even reached 8 caddies and 3 tails, more than double the price of the first one. Striking while the iron was hot, Blessing Gathering House was good at doing business. Then they launched the third questioning inner heart pill. When explaining it, they even played the gimmick of the last one at the auction, causing those anxious guys to become more and more crazy. The transaction price of this one was even more outrageous. At the beginning, it directly rushed to 10 caddies of upper-grade spirit stones, and finally, it was bought by the VIP in the box at the price of 10 caddies and 7 tails. The 3-5 revolutions questioning inner heart pills, excluding the handling fees of the auction house, brought Yang Chun 22 caddies of upper-grade spirit stones. In the blink of an eye, Yang Chun went from a poor man who couldn't even take out 2 caddies of upper-grade spirit stones to a rich man. In any case, it was a good thing to be able to see the tribulation of a peak Earth Immortal Master. At least he had a better understanding of the Earth Immortal tribulation. He could also refer to it when he was facing his own tribulation. This trip was not in vain. However, when the next auction item appeared, Yang Chun couldn't believe his eyes. The nameless ancient zither, according to the appraisal of a refining master, was at least a 5th-grade magic weapon. The base price was 5 caddies of upper-grade spirit stones. How could it be? Looking at the familiar appearance of the ancient zither that the auctioneer showed, Yang Chun couldn't believe it. Wasn't this ancient zither already bought by Marshal Uncle Lu of the Xintian sect and prepared to give it to Granny Tianqin? How could it appear here? Could it be that the information that guy told him was wrong? However, no matter how Yang Chun looked at it, the ancient zither on the stage was clearly the ancient zither that Yang Chun had been looking for. The style and color of the zither were exactly the same. Seeing this, Yang Chun was pleasantly surprised. Fortunately, he wanted to participate in this auction on a whim. Otherwise, he would have missed what he was looking for. Chapter 1596. After discovering the target, Yang Chun did not get carried away. There were always some doubts about an unexpected thing. At least before, Yang Chun had always heard about it from the guy in the immortal world, but he had never really seen the real thing. Even if this ancient zither looked like the magic weapon in the description, it was hard to say whether it was the one or not. Speaking of it, this ancient zither and Yang Chun's 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill were recently received, so there were no 2 things on the list of the auction that had been prepared for such a long time. This kind of thing was very common, so every auction, no matter how big or small, there would be a short period of time dedicated to these things. Of course, things were good enough, otherwise there would be no such opportunity for temporary insertion. 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pill had such qualifications, and this ancient zither also had such qualifications. This thing was a good thing. There was no need to go forward and look carefully. One could feel the treasure light on the ancient zither from a distance. Before the auction began, there was a short period of time for everyone to explore with their spiritual awareness. When the spiritual awareness touched it, everyone could be sure that this was definitely a magic weapon, at least of the 5th grade. A 5th grade magic weapon. Even among the celestial immortal masters in the spiritual world, there were not many 5th grade magic weapons in their hands. This zither should be the finale of the auction no matter where it was placed. It was just not known why it was added temporarily, and what was even more surprising was its auction base price. The base price is 10 gene of upper-grade spirit stones. When the auction host announced the base price, it suddenly caused a burst of exclamation in the auction hall. How was it possible? So cheap? What are you thinking about? This is an auction. The base price is not necessarily lower than the final price. When someone finally told the truth, the noise of the crowd subsided. People who coveted this ancient zither began to estimate in their hearts what price they had to pay to get this ancient zither. 15 gene, 18 gene, 22 gene. Yang Chun was not willing to show weakness, and directly bet all the spirit stones he had. Obviously, such a small amount of spirit stones was far from enough for a 5th grade magic weapon. Immediately, the price directly surpassed Yang Chen's net worth of spirit stones. After a few shouts, it directly soared to 53 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones. In the room at the back, the water screen was still showing the scene in the lobby. Hearing Yang Chen bid 22 caddies, the owner of Blessing Gathering Building heaved a long sigh of relief. He was not afraid that Yang Chen could not bid, but he was afraid that Yang Chen would not participate in the auction. Now it seemed that Yang Chen was still interested in this zither. What the owner of Blessing Gathering Building hoped to see the most was that Yang Chen could participate in the auction again, and even buy the zither with the attitude that he was determined to win. The higher the transaction price, the better. It was not for the profit of Blessing Gathering House, but for the purified bottle in Yang Chen's hands. The owner of Blessing Gathering Building knew very well that Yang Chen should not have many spirit stones on him. He did not even have 2 caddies of top-grade spirit stones to participate in the auction. He also needed to sell the 5th-grade questioning inner heart pill to raise money. The owner's main idea was the purified bottle in Yang Chen's hands. The higher the price Yang Chen bid, the more spirit stones he owed to Blessing Gathering Building, and naturally, he could take the opportunity to buy it. At the same time, in a VIP box of Blessing Gathering Building, 2 people were staring at the lively scene in the auction hall below without saying a word. Both of them were at the peak of the human immortal realm. It seemed that they were in a master-servant relationship. The tall man in front, even if he was sitting, had the height of an ordinary person standing up. The young man who was slightly behind looked very ordinary at first glance. At this moment, the faces of the 2 people had a cold expression, staring closely at the people bidding below, as if to find out who was the highest bidder. 60 Gene, 63 Gene, a 5th-grade magic weapon. Regardless of whether it was suitable for him or not, it was definitely right to hold it in his hands. Many people had such an idea. Otherwise, there would not be so many people competing for an unorthodox ancient zither magic weapon. Of course, it was precisely because of the unorthodox magic weapon that the price did not reach an outrageous level. Under this idea, the people who participated in the competition raised the price higher and higher. Finally, a large number of people could no longer afford the higher and higher prices and withdrew from the competition. The owner of Blessing Gathering Building was very disappointed to see that Yang Chen did not continue after calling out his entire wealth. He was anxious and wished that he could pay a higher price for Yang Chen. After Yang Chen called out his spirit stones, he did not continue, but began to think faintly. So far, the bids were all from the individual guests in the hall, and none of the guests in the VIP box had spoken. What did this mean? In his previous life, Yang Chen knew that this ancient zither had always been a warm-up item in those big auctions, and no one cared about it at all. Although the level of the magic weapon was very high, it was limited to the material and refining method. Its real use was to play the zither and nothing else. At most, it could only be used to study the refining method until Yang Chen's friend found out the secret. Looking at the current situation, the people in the VIP box did not make a move, which could only mean one thing, that the reputation of this thing had spread among some big figures, and it had not yet spread to ordinary cultivators. This was very normal. Now that it was hundreds of years earlier than Yang Chen, it was normal that it had not been discovered by everyone. In this case, Yang Chen was not in a hurry to buy it at a high price. In fact, what Yang Chen wanted was the secret hidden in the ancient zither. As long as he could hold it in his hand, Yang Chen would know about it. There was no need to own it. Since that was the case, there was no need to be a fool in the eyes of others. When the time came to find out who had obtained the magic treasure, it would be enough to secretly observe it. Not revealing the mountain and not revealing the water was the way of the king. The spatial spiritual awareness cultivation method was very interesting. It could put a spiritual awareness mark on a person or object for a long time, which was easy to track. Yang Chen and Li Heng had communicated for so long, and he had also studied his spiritual awareness mark many times, so he had some insights. In addition to the recent communication between Yang Chen's body and the spiritual awareness seed left in the mortal world, Yang Chen was now fully confident that he could attach his spiritual awareness to someone without being detected. Seeing that the people in the auction hall were shouting more and more outrageous prices, Yang Chun had been smiling and sitting on the fishing platform and had no intention of making a move. This made the owner of Blessing Gathering House anxious. If Yang Chun did not continue to bid, then how could he make him owe spirit stones and then plot to seize the rejuvenation bottle in Yang Chen's hands? Chapter 1597. Now the hall was full of people. There were many masters, and Yang Chun had already seen several peak Earth Immortal masters. In those VIP boxes, there was no shortage of Heaven Immortal masters. In this case, even if he cultivated the 3 purities secret art, Yang Chun did not dare to release his divine awareness at will to explore the surroundings. However, this did not prevent Yang Chun from secretly observing carefully. As long as the masters in the VIP boxes did not come out, it was not difficult to know who bought the ancient zither. Soon the fierce bidding came to a result. In the disappointed mood of the owner of the Blessing Gathering building, this 5th grade ancient zither was bought by an Earth Immortal scholar who loved music for more than 80 kilograms of upper grade spirit stones. So far, this was the highest price that had ever been sold at the auction. The next thing, Yang Chun did not care much, but intentionally or unintentionally paid attention to the scholar who had bought the ancient zither. The auction has been going on for a full 3 days. It was not until 3 days later that all the auction items were turned on the stage. Some sold at a good price, and some were not so ideal. Fortunately, there was no sect, and the whole auction was quite successful. When people left, either satisfied or sighing, no one noticed that Yang Chun was delayed for a while when he got up and accidentally bumped into the scholar who had bought the ancient zither. Quietly, a divine awareness mark, which had been improved by Yang Chen's 3 purities secret art, had been attached to the scholar's hair. Yang Chen's movements were very natural, and even the owner of the Blessing Gathering building and the shopkeeper, who had been staring at Yang Chun on the water curtain, did not notice the abnormality. Everything happened so naturally, without any flaws. Next, it was naturally the link of handing over the spirit stones and goods. The Blessing Gathering building was such a big industry and had a strong reputation. This process was already very familiar. The shop assistant's eyesight was also very good. Even without waiting for Yang Chun to come over and speak, they had already taken the initiative to report the things that Yang Chun auctioned. The final transaction price, after deducting the handling fee, 20 kilograms of upper-grade spirit stones went into Yang Chun's Chinquin bag. "Sir, please wait." Just as Yang Chun was about to turn around and leave, a voice rang in Yang Chun's ears. Immediately, the appraiser who first received Yang Chun and another middle-aged man appeared in front of Yang Chun. "Greetings, master." The shop assistant saluted and, at the same time, indirectly told Yang Chun the identity of the visitor. Yang Chun was a little surprised that the owner of the Blessing Gathering Pavilion came forward. He had only auctioned 5 revolutions questioning inner heart pills, which was not very unusual in the spiritual world. At most, it was a matter of 20 to 30 caddies of upper-grade spirit stones. It was not worthy for the owner of the Blessing Gathering Pavilion to come forward in person, right? This was the delivery room, so it was not convenient to talk. Under the lead of the owner of the Blessing Gathering building, Yang Chun came to the back hall of the auction. It was a big hall where the owner and the shopkeeper met the distinguished guests. "Sir, please stay. I have something to ask of you. Please don't take it to heart." The owner of the Blessing Gathering building was very polite. After serving tea, he first apologized and at the same time directly stated that he had something to ask of Yang Chun. With this, at least Yang Chun had a good impression of the owner of the Blessing Gathering building. In his previous life, Yang Chun knew the name of the Blessing Gathering building, but he did not have much contact with it, let alone directly communicate with the owner. Since the other party was so polite and said that he had something to ask of him, Yang Chun did not go too far. He responded very politely, "What orders do you have, master?" "I don't dare to give any orders. My surname is Wong. You could just call me Old Wong." The owner of the Blessing Gathering building did not immediately talk about his own matters, but first introduced his surname. After a slight pause, seeing that Yang Chun was very calm, he then said, "I am being rude. I want to ask something from you." Please give it to me. Since Yang Chun did not bid again, Master Wang knew that his plan to let Yang Chun owe him spirit stones to get the eternal vase had failed. However, Master Wang was also in business for many years. He knew that that kind of thinking was not the right way. Doing business was about making money with harmony. As long as he came straight to the point, if the price was right, he might be able to get the pure vase in Yang Chen's hand smoothly. Because of this, even if Wang Dongzhu himself was already a master at the peak of the Earth Immortal realm, but in front of Yang Chun, this human immortal junior, he still called him Mr., and his posture was very low. In the spiritual realm, Yang Chun really did not see many Earth Immortal masters who could put their mentality so low. No wonder his business was so big. It was not without reason. What is it? Since the other party was asking for benefits, Yang Chun was not the kind of person who would reject people 1,000 miles away, so he asked with a smile. The pure vase in your hand, I'm willing to buy it at a high price. I only ask you to give it to me. Master Wang did not hide it, and clearly stated his goal. This. Yang Chun raised his hand and revealed the whole jade vase. Old Wang, you want to buy this wine vase at a high price? Wine vase. Master Wang did not expect that the pure vase in Yang Chen's hand turned out to be used to hold wine, and he could not help but be a little dumbfounded. Could it be that his ace appraiser also had times where he made a mistake? Looking at Master Wang's surprised expression, Yang Chun smiled slightly, and then 3 wine cups appeared in his hand. He picked up the vase casually and filled each cup with a cup of 1,000-year-old jade dragon wine. Then he picked up a cup and raised it to Master Wang and the appraiser opposite him. I brewed it myself. It's not good to be seen in public. Please have a taste. As he said, he drank it in one gulp. Master Wang and the appraiser did not suspect that Yang Chen's wine was poisoned. In Blessing Gathering House, no one really dared to have this kind of courage. In a puzzled expression, the two each picked up the wine cup and gulped it down, and then immediately realized the beauty of this cup of wine. Good wine. As the owner of Blessing Gathering House, he did not know how many good wines he had tasted, but this cup of Jade Dragon wine still made him feel comfortable from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He did not know how many years it had been since he had such a comfortable feeling, and he could not help but cry out. The appraiser enjoyed it even more. He closed his eyes and savored it for a long time before he opened his eyes, and his face was full of satisfaction. However, neither of them asked for it. Asking for a cup was a courtesy in return. If they asked for more, it would be a favor. As a businessman, they could not simply owe favors. Mr. actually used it to hold such good wine. It is not a disgrace to this bottle. After Master Wang praised, his face became a little embarrassed, but he still said, I don't know if it is convenient for Mr. to let me try. Maybe there are some mistakes in the way Mr. uses it.